We can go ahead and get started. Let's see. Just a report out of closed session. Back in open session.
We had some leave requests for classified, a maternity leave and a sick leave request. We granted those. Those were standard. 2 of them were dealing with family medical. We had a stipulated agreement at auction that was uncontested. We dealt with that.
Item C, public employee employment for the superintendent. In closed session, we approved the superintendent's contract for an additional 3 years, and we'll discuss that further later in the contract or later in the meeting.
Can you tell me the vote?
The vote was 4-0 or 4-1 with board member Nunez voting no and all others voting yes. And I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Told that there are 3 items in the action area that will not be handled tonight because Nikki is absent from the meeting. She's ill. Those are items L, M, and N.
Right.
I'd also like to change number 14 from being at the very end of the meeting up to the front, please. At the beginning, maybe before we do, well, my personal preference would be before 7, but as soon to the very front as it can be done, the very top of the list.
I don't have a problem with that as long as we can say put like a 10 or 15 minute time limit on that.
No, I don't know how many people are interested in speaking. I just know that there are people interested. I understand there are people who wish to speak at this meeting, and I just think it would be better if they could do it at the beginning instead of at the end.
Okay. You want to make a motion to approve the agenda as such?
Yes, I would like to move that we modify the agenda to eliminate L and M and N until later, as well as move 14 up to just before 7.
Do we have a second for that? Anybody?
May have died, I guess.
Anybody want to provide a motion for a different?
I'll move that we move that up in the agenda, change the agenda.
Okay. Are you seconding Paula's?
Yes, I'm seconding Paul's, I'm sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So let's put item 14 at item 7. So we'll take that right up to flag salute. So, Mr. Colby, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
That's the bigger one.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, public comments for items not on the agenda. Anybody would like to speak, just please step up to the podium. Not everybody at once.
I think our speaker thought it was at 5:30.
Then we will accommodate them when they come.
Thank you so much.
So, moving down the agenda. Hot seat count.
I have not received the hot seat counts yet. Did you get them from Richard?
Well, I have the district enrollment. The district enrollment's at 1560.
1560?
Yeah, so we're about plus 40 to 50 over where we ended last year.
Is that a good thing?
That's a good thing. Our kindergarten enrollment is higher. We had to bring on a teacher to make that accommodation. The high school numbers are higher. even though the 8th grade we knew coming in was bigger, the influx of the high school has been pretty good. So our numbers at the high school are way up this one. So the high school's at 460, I think, right now. That's up significantly from last year.
Cool.
So that's a good thing.
Infrastructure, no issues in terms of housing everybody?
No, I mean, we don't have any open rooms at the high school, but the schedule was able to accommodate the students. You know, some class sizes are bigger than they were a year ago, but we're fitting it.
WTA comments.
Tessa's not here yet, and she's supposed to give them.
Okay. We'll try to accommodate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CSEA, Dan.
We have no comments at this time.
Okay. Board, let's start with Paul.
Well, in the first place, my apologies last month for not being here. I had a family emergency, so some of this should have been said last month. In particular, I wanted to make sure that we were all aware of what happens with Nuestra Alianza, the summer school program that is housed at Blosser. This year, I was a little concerned that they don't have a specific contract, but they did receive custodial time, which was an improvement over the year before. I was super impressed to see the amount of community and parent support that went into this summer program. It's a 4-week program that teaches half academics and then half cultural and artistic and musical events. And so it was very, very nice. They were having to turn away students because they have only limited space and they had to say thanks, but we're full, try again next year. They did an education exchange with 2 teachers from Mexico who came and explained a number of things that a lot of people just weren't aware of. Some people have the misconception that it's a summer school done in Spanish. It's a summer school done almost exclusively in English. There is a class where the teachers, there are 2 classes, but it's really one class because one group of kids goes to one teacher and one goes to the other, that does a lot of their things in Spanish, does a lot of the instruction in Spanish, but their academics in reading and math, all the instruction is done in English, and they do a pre and post test where they found growth in just 4 weeks, which I was especially impressed with. And it's pretty much the same pre-test as the post, so you can say, especially for example, the easiest to understand is the kindergarten type where you say, okay, we have 26 letters, do you know their names? And they know 12. And when they leave after 4 weeks, do you know their names? Well, now they know 20 of them. And so this is the type of showing growth and things that go on in the most easiest to understand way. I thought that was really good. They did have a need for they required 4 classrooms. They received 2 and 2 were office spaces. And so, well, one was a resource office space. But anyway, it would have probably been nice if they'd have had 3 classrooms instead of just 2, but that was the way it went. I went and saw Brookside before school started, and the painting on the wing that goes from 1 to 9, I think it ends at 9, right? Okay. That looked really nice. The trim and everything looked really, really good. That was pretty. I was curious about the amount of things that maintenance was able to do over the summer. And I was also curious about the work that the cafeteria did to supply all the summer schools and the community that has a right to come and eat if they're under 18. Used to be up to a percentage beyond the students around, and I can't seem to get straight information on whether or not it includes anyone who shows up or if it only is up to a cap that used to be like 4% over the student count. It is anyone? Oh, good, because I was real curious about that, so I was interested in knowing.
You don't even have to live in Willits.
Yeah, I knew that, and you could be homeless or any number of
You
things
drive
and
through town,
qualify.
stop for lunch with your kids.
Yeah, I was real impressed to learn that part. But the other big deal was I didn't know if there was any kind of a count on that, and if maybe I could get to hear about it. You know, like if 1,000
Christie has
kids
to
was.
count. We're doing our
That kind of
food
thing.
service audit right now.
Oh, okay. Well, good, maybe next time or sometime I could do that. I have my same concerns as usual about how we sort of have a large turnover sometimes in this district, in particular the last year or two. And I think all of us already know what I think about 2 years or less of staff and the amount of waivers and things like that. So we'll just save that. And then lastly, because I think my other part of my report will be covered after 5:30, my biggest deal lately, for this year especially, is that I'm understanding that the English language learner programs are going to have they're going to be a major focus. I'm truly hoping with everything that is important to me in education at this minute, that that's exactly what will happen. My concern, however, is that I understand that the program has been changed from 100% program at Gloucester to an 80% program, where 50-some students will, at the moment that I checked, which was 2 weeks ago, we're at about 53, and probably 12 or 13 of them will not be receiving any other services besides monitored in their classroom. And that's because of the 20% cut. And then last year there was a 1.5 full-time equivalent positions to the program. This year that's been dropped, depending upon how you want to do the math, but a half of that position is now not doing that. Although I must say there are 3 people who are going to have one group of piece of anywhere from 4 to 6 kids, which will cut about 12 or so students off. But then that still leaves the current count of students from about 73 down to 60. And the one full-time equivalent position that's supposed to take care of that will have a scheduling issue that is supposed to accommodate those kids per day. And the concern is, will it or won't it match up with the ed code that requires 30 minutes per group as opposed to 20 minutes a group?
Ed code does not require 30 minutes. There's no time minute requirement.
Okay, maybe I watched or read the wrong part of the ed code. Okay,
It was
well,
changed 2 years ago. I called last year about it.
okay, and so now it's a 20-minute event?
There is no
No time
prescribed,
block at all?
there's no prescribed time.
Oh, yeah.
It's prescribed that you have a program that addresses their needs, not a time limit.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's an even bigger concern, truthfully, because we spend LCAP monies specifically for students of those needs, and it really worries me that if there aren't a little more concrete parameters, our very important population is going to be allowed to just slide. I have serious concerns with asking teachers to make sure that in addition to the other things they need to take care of and the other students in their class, that they need to additionally focus on particular students. Although in truth, I don't know a teacher that doesn't focus on student needs, but when the needs are doubled and tripled, it worries me. I'm just basically wanting to make sure that we understand that cutting a program that is not doing well is seldom really helpful to the kids involved. Okay? And that's kind of the bulk of my report at this moment.
I was able to go to most of the back-to-school nights. I went to Brookside, Gloucester, Bethel Grove, and Sanhedrin, and it was great to see. I know the teachers, because the back-to-school nights were earlier this year, that there wasn't a chance to maybe have in full display some of the students' work, but most of the classrooms that I went in had a lot of visuals still up on the wall, and I think all the back-to-school nights that I went to were well attended, and it was nice to see Sanhedrin's, the changes that they've made in the building format at Sanhedrin. Anyway, I didn't get to the high school because it was the same night as Brookside and Sanhedrin, but I was pleased that I got to both Brookside and Sanhedrin, and I would like it maybe next year that the back-to-school nights are not on the same night, because I know that there was a issue for some, like there was a teacher at Brookside that also had a student at the high school, and so she wasn't able to do both. It would be nice if we could have them all different nights. And my granddaughter started kindergarten, and the first 2 weeks of kindergarten were early dismissal, and which I did not understand why at first, but then I found out it was for each kindergarten teacher to meet one-on-one with their families. And I just thought it was a wonderful way for kindergarten to start and for kids to start school, so that the teacher and the parents were really, had a dialogue going, and that the teachers were able to understand their children better, maybe their students better from the very beginning, because they understood something about the family and the family and home life and that kind of thing. So I thought it was a wonderful idea, even though I was the one in my family that had to pick up my granddaughter every day, and I was worn out every 2 weeks. So thanks.
Well, I apologize for not being here last month. I had a summer flu. I can't remember ever having a summer flu, but I had one. I have had a chance to go to all of our sites, and I attended about half the back-to-school nights. They were well attended, and even the high school had parents going through the halls, which I was really happy about as they were ringing the bell and moving them along, so that was really good. I did visit all the sites, however, and I wanted to speak to the administrators, and it just happened that they were all having a training, so they were all at training that day, so I missed about half of them. But anyways, it's very exciting. The new year is exciting. It's exciting to see the kids back. It's exciting to see the staff in there ready to go, and everyone looks refreshed. And I know you don't necessarily look that way in spring, but boy, when you start out, everybody's all go get them, and they're all excited. It's very exciting. It's a good feeling to go and see the work of the teachers and those smiles on the kids, and let's go.
Mr. Goldman? No comments at this time.
Well, pretty much just school is getting in, everything's sort of same thing as last year for the most part. We've got some new teachers, some new bell thing. Sounds kind of weird, but we're getting used to it. I like it. It's a lot easier to hear. I know last year a lot of problems were coming from not being able to hear the PA systems very well, especially for morning announcements. So I do like the clarity of the new one. A lot of people just don't like the actual noise of the bell. So, people are resistant to change. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's something you can change anyways. The only concern really that I've heard throughout the majority of the student body is the drinking fountain situation. We have one super awesome drinking fountain in the cafeteria, and as soon as lunch and brunch are not in session, there is pretty much no way to get into the cafeteria. So I know some people have told us that we have some, but they aren't installed, but we don't really know what's going on. If we do have more, or if we could get more.
I'm going to address that.
Okay, awesome. That's pretty much it. As far as school goes.
Very good. I have nothing. Do we have anybody close up?
This is here, Ann, I think the speaker for
Okay, go ahead, start.
Brookside.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. So I'm Sandy Lucier, and I'm a parent in the district. I have a student in the district at Bethel Grove, and I'm a second grade teacher at Brookside. And I've been teaching at Brookside 15 years. This is my 15th year, and before that I subbed in all schools for 5 years, so I've been here for 20 years in the district. So this is I understand this is the public hearing for the board to decide whether each student has sufficient textbooks, instructional materials in reading, language arts, math, science, and social studies, and that are aligned to the content standards. And I'm concerned because we don't. So let's see, in July, maybe some of you know this already, maybe some of you don't, but in July, over the summer, an email was sent to all K through 5 teachers in our district from administrators and Mark telling us that we need to set aside the state-adopted curriculum and put it in a box for now. So we are currently only allowed to teach this curriculum with proficient and advanced readers. So proficient and advanced readers. And all students that are not considered to be reading at grade level at this time will not be allowed access to those materials. So those students will only get unlocking the reading code or unlocking the grammar code, the curriculum, which gives them access to basically of the standards. We have the standards here, so for K through 2 right here. The phonics standards, word recognition, phonics and decoding, and then the grammar, knowing their nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. So those standards. But we have many, other standards here that are also on our standards-based report cards that, as teachers, we always teach. So as teachers, we understand, basic early literacy skills, as what's in the email, which I have here, if you want to see it. But focusing back on those 5, basic early literacy skills. As teachers, we know that. We know them well. We also understand the brain research behind this phonics, being the brain research that we see. We've had many trainings, a lot of time learning about the brain research behind phonics, and we understand that. And we understand leveled reading, so we would not give a student who is reading a level 8 in 2nd grade, we would not hand them a level 24 text and say, here, find main idea and details. And, we're not going to do that. So the problem with what is happening is all students are not allowed equal access to all the standards at their level. ELG, I know was mentioned, that's one example, our ELG program with this state adopted program, which went through the whole process. We had reps from every site, 5-day process, adopting this a few years ago. This was the first time we had a program that was aligned, completely aligned with the standards and the ELG standards as well, so together. And so then this year that was taken away. So the time it wasn't able to work it out, so it was replaced with phonics only. So that is a concern with the language needs of English learners. That's another topic we can talk about more later. But we need aligned, instruction, access to high quality materials that are aligned to higher standards, the Common Core state standards, that all students deserve this. English learners and lower readers, as it says in the Ed Code section 60119, it says, quote, all English learners, all students must be provided standards aligned instructional materials that are consistent with the content curriculum framework. Now, I think, all other standards are, also important. So aligned curriculum that is aligned ensures that there are no gaps across grade levels. Okay, so all 2nd grade teachers are teaching the same concepts. Like one is analyzing how characters respond to challenges, for example. And maybe another one is finding main idea and details in a paragraph of informational text. Now students need to be taught how to do this in 2nd grade. We need to teach this, we need to model this. And we can't use that curriculum for all students. We can only teach in small groups for proficient and advanced students, so the other kids, only get it when they eventually get there, if they, get to 52 words per minute. So my new teachers, and there are 7 2nd grades this year, 7, and 3 of our teachers are new teachers. And that's something I'll talk about later, but I have had no time to meet with them and help them. And we are really struggling with that. 3 new teachers, I'm trying to help them in the hallway passing and eating lunch together and meeting and trying to support them, and it's very hard. I feel like I'm not able to do that, but I'll talk about that more later. So when teachers have to find their own resources for this on their own, to teach all the other standards, to create their own resources on their own time, it's a tremendous undertaking. It requires hours of research. So if we want high standards to be implemented faithfully, and ensure that all students are given the best opportunity to succeed here at Willits Unified. We need to give teachers every support possible, and I understand the huge focus on phonics. We understand the brain research behind it. I'm not questioning that at all. We all get that. I get that. It makes sense to supplement our state-adopted curriculum with Unlocking the Code, but to throw it out altogether until a child is reading 52 words per minute in 2nd grade at this time of year is not doing what is best for our students. We have a duty as educators to ignite a love of learning and a love of reading in all students.
Can I ask a question?
Questions? Yeah.
What's your solution?
Well, I understand, supplementing with the phonics, it's really direct instruction. That's been great. There are some, great things. But I think that, well, number one, we need to have more time to collaborate and meet more, so we can talk as grade levels and get together. That is completely lacking, and anyway. So a solution would be to be allowed to teach, our state-adopted curriculum that we all had reps from every site. We went through 5 days of each time they took apart the, looking at there's a list from the state, whether it's, we chose the best one. It came with leveled readers. It came
I
with
know all
the whole
about
set.
benchmarks.
So it's
I
not
signed
that
the
we're
check
just in
right
there, I think we need to be trusted as professionals that we can meet and educators with experience can help new teachers, and we can get together and say, how are we teaching this? How are we guaranteeing the same, education in each classroom, in room 5, in room 8, in room 27, where they are, we can't be on our own scrambling, recreating the wheel.
And I don't disagree with
For all of the
at
other.
all. Here's my biggest issue. Our day's too short. Our instructional day's too short. If you look at other districts, the charter school, they go 40 minutes longer every day. Every time we talk about something at K-5 level, the response is we don't have enough time. No matter if it's math, English, science, social studies, skill building, whatever it is, the answer is always we don't have enough time.
Well, I think we make time. I think we find the time. I don't feel that we don't have enough time. I mean, we manage our time
then
really
every
well.
time
We're
I ask a
multitasking
question, and
teachers.
my answer is always,
Sure.
well, we don't have enough time to do this. How are we going to do this? That's the answer I get almost 9 out of 10 times when we talk about something. I'm in total agreement that I want kids to have a rich curriculum. Yeah, I signed the check on benchmarks. I understand. I know it's good. I know that kids have to have instructional skills. The issue with the Common Core is it wants application and deeper thinking. But in order to do that, you have to have the basic skills to do that. That's the crux of the problem. That is the crux of the problem in every state who uses Common Core, is how do you get basic skills and still get to that other place?
I think we can. I think we can do both, because we're not, we're not giving them something, we're
in
modeling
grades
it at this
K2,
age. We are
There's no
teaching them how to do
assessment
it.
really that the state uses. But the state's assessment in 3.5 is telling us that very few are getting there. So where is that falling off? What happens in 3.5 that makes 20% of the kids proficient? Where's that falling off? That's my question.
So I'm the ELD teacher and coordinator at our site, and I'm also in year 20 with the district, and I've been teaching for 21 years. And throughout this time, I've worked with kids with, like we all have, that have a huge range of abilities. And sometimes kids, you're right, the inability to decode, that does interfere with their ability to access on their own certain materials. But I've worked with some of the most awesome kids that are second language learners or students that maybe have a learning disability, and they can think critically, and they can have discussions.
With access.
And they can
They can.
show those skills, and they can grow
With
in that way
access.
with scaffolding and support. But they have to have access to those topics, and they have to have access to that material and that content. And so
And-
that's my thought in hearing
Right,
what you
and,
just said.
and I don't disagree with any of that, okay? The only thing we really disagree on is the amount of time. I don't think you have enough time unless, when I ask people, that's just kind of a patent excuse, we don't have time. Because the issue is our performance is not showing improvement, especially if you use the state standards, and that's where the Common Core standards you're reading, that's where they're assessed at.
But we've been just, it's so chopped up. We had a program, then we started benchmarking for only 2
Benchmarks
years.
for 3 years before.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
So we didn't even get, did we even get to do it 2 years? It was
2
like a year
years,
and a
2
half.
years.
And then we started the other thing, and then we took out the parts, and then it's all pieced together. So if we had consistency and we just were getting the ball rolling with this program, and it was this halted, complete stop, put it in a box. And my administrator knows, I've talked to her, I talked to her over the phone in the summer, she knows, what I'm saying
One
here.
really critical thing I want to make sure people understand. There is a major difference between curriculum and instruction. Those are two completely different things. Curriculum is the stuff you use, you give them. Instruction is what you're doing up in front of the room and teaching the skill. Unlocking the code is not a curriculum, it is instruction, it's professional development for the teachers to teach, and we are way beyond phonics. We're into grammar now. We're going to be into morphology of the language, the entire scope of language arts. But it is a process, it does take a long time. It's slow, and I understand it's a new learning curve. You've never not heard me say that I appreciate the work you're doing, I understand it's hard, and I understand it's different. I understand your perspective too on you want to use the benchmark curriculum for everybody. Again, I'm open to suggestions. I would be glad to meet with a group of you to talk about time. Because I'm going to talk about time because when I ask people from your group, that's the response I always get. We don't have enough time.
Can I say something? And you can stop me if So I am the kindergarten teacher at Willits Elementary Charter School.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are wondering how do we do well on those tests and how do we feel the kids read well? What these teachers are saying is absolutely accurate because kids can absolutely comprehend when they can't read at all. The other thing I hear you saying over and over and over is time and not enough time. So I've approached a couple times our past director because I would like to put on a free professional development thing that can literally show you how to teach phonics to kids in under a week. I'm talking all the phonics sounds, so you can add it to any curriculum you want. It is the reason our kids read well. I would love to share that with you guys. So I was planning.
Who are you? And
My name is Ashley Sharp. I'm the kindergarten teacher at Willits Elementary Charter School. So what I'm seeing is teachers are really upset because they're having to teach something that they're feeling isn't working well and it's a new thing. They want to teach all the curriculum, which is totally understandable. What I'm saying is that I would love to be able to offer you what I have that you can add to Unlocking the Code or to any other curriculum that you are teaching, regardless of what it is, that will teach 90% of your kids to read in kindergarten, at a end of first grade level. They will reach that words per minute that you need because they will be able to decode all those words. You can still do all the Unlocking the Code stuff if you need to, but if it's a words per minute thing and it's knowing all those phonics sounds, I really would like to give you my program that will teach you that. So, I on the professional development day that's on November 1st, I was planning on setting up a time that you guys could come over. I was told there wasn't interest in that, so I was planning on doing it after hours. But anyways, we can talk further.
I'd love to
about
meet with you and see what
But
you
if it's a
do.
time thing, like, I mean, kids all need to learn to read, and kids need to love to learn to read, and they can all be read to and comprehend, even if they can't read. And usually the kids who are like the most intelligent, comprehension-wise, have trouble with the decoding and that type of stuff. So,
But your
anyways,
day is 40 minutes longer and you don't do short
and so
use
that's why I'm
days.
standing up as your sit, is I hear you saying it's because their day
Okay,
is
so let's
longer.
be clear. Your kids have 125 more hours a year of instruction.
But they don't have 280 minutes of phonics.
Yes.
They
because-
do not have
I'm
280
not
minutes of
disputing
phonics.
it.
You're saying we have more hours, and I'm telling you, that's not the number one reason that our kids are learning to read.
It isn't, I'm not implying it's number one.
Yeah, you are.
We have electives.
Yeah, you are.
I'm saying it would
280
help.
minutes.
Keep it
We have
professional,
electives
please.
that take up hours too. We have Spanish every single day, and we have music every single day, and we have other things that take up.
Sure.
We have PE, but my kindergartners have 2 hours of recess a day.
Yeah.
So, in the minutes that I have for teaching are less than what you have for teaching. So all I'm saying is, if it's a time thing and you're asking for a solution, I can give you a way to teach phonics very quickly to the majority
I'd
of
be
the
glad
class,
to
and
meet
I'd
with
love
you.
to share it.
I've looked at lots of programs. I'll be glad
It's not
to
a
meet.
program, it's something to look at, it's a tool. And they will learn those sounds like,
So real briefly, we hear you. I certainly hear you. But I also hear the superintendent saying he's open to suggestions and for compromise. I would advise that you guys, as a group, get together and see if you guys can work out a compromise that meets all of your needs. I like the idea of some new material that might make it easier for everybody. But it still boils down to is our test scores are poor, and they've been poor for a very long time. And as a board, our marching orders for our superintendent from day one have been improved test scores. We understand that unlocking the code has been challenging. That's probably the best way I can put it, and I understand that. I also understand how you want to be, you want to teach to the whole child. But I kind of think in terms of, if I can't read, then I really can't utilize the rest of those materials very well that you want to teach. So from my perspective, we need to focus on getting kids at least a grade level as quickly as we can, so they can absorb all the rest of that material that you do want to teach out of the Common Core. I don't know the best way to do that. I'm not a teacher, but I have to put a certain amount of faith in the superintendent to try and drive this bus and push it the direction that we want it to go, namely that's going to improve test scores for our students across the board.
So can I address the test scores for just a moment? In the July 20 whatever email that was sent to us that Sandy just shared, first year benchmark, I can't quote all of the percentages that were there, but overall, it was up around 40%.
They were impressively better.
Okay. Second year benchmark, they went up to about 48%. Do you have them?
And what is the assessment you're talking about, so they know what you're talking about?
Was words per minute? The Acadians? They're Acadians, I believe.
Right. It's not the entire scope of reading.
So, but these were the percentages that were presented to us in this email.
These are the benchmarks that we're using as a district, am I right?
I believe so. So about 40%, up 48, second year benchmark. And then the third year where we started using unlocking the code, and we were told last year we could use benchmark, but unlocking the code was a huge focus. And so it required a lot of time, which meant there was less time to use benchmark, even though it was still allowed to be used. Scores went down below that, I don't remember the percentage, but they went down below that first percentage that I was telling you about. And the implication has been that teachers weren't doing their job. And that's the feeling, that's the message that we're getting. And I would argue maybe it's because we're trying to piece together
I look at those scores right there, and they tell me that teachers are doing their jobs. I'm impressed by those scores.
Let me add to that,
The scores are showing growth over the prior year.
We didn't do my comments, because one of my comments was gonna be,
But they're not showing growth.
They're showing.
There was a
It went down last year
with
with the implementation of unlocking the code.
what I was gonna comment in my comments on was about how well I thought the scores were from our dibbles. I thought those were really good. I think we've made good strides in dibbles.
We were told that the kindergartners at mid-year had all of their letter sounds, and let me tell you that the first graders do not have all of their letter sounds.
All I can tell you is the dibble, from what I saw, the dibbles results, I went right on the website we do it in, and the dibbles results were really good except for one grade. They were really much better than they have been. That was my indication that you're doing a better job in unlocking the code, skills like that. And again, the skills that we have to work on, again, there are recall things that come out of dibbles. Dibbles is the national standard on reading. Okay, not the benchmarks, not the state scores, it's the national standard.
Mark, excuse me, what the test scores they're talking to you about are from the letter from July.
I know what they're talking
And the
about.
one that you're talking about are the ones that you just published that
Right.
happened at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Just so
I'm
that it's
talking
not
about
mixed
different
up.
things that you're talking
I
about.
know they're different
Oh,
things.
okay.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of what they are.
Oh, okay. Just-
What I was impressed by was the dibble scores not only were better, they were better even after summer regression. So obviously what they taught, they were retaining. So I took that as a very positive thing, the dibble scores. I thought they were really good. I think that's a great starting place.
So the scores I was referring to are the percentages
I know what
in
you're,
the email.
you're referring
that
to
was
the
sent to us.
benchmark assessment in the program.
How is that equating with the oral reading fluency? Did that equate there? Because even if the scores were higher with the correct letter sounds and with, with the phonics aspects, but I want our kids to be real readers, and that would be
I use
just like
the
in the oral
composite
reading
score.
fluency passages, which I'm more interested in that because I want to know that kids can read for meaning and have that, and that's why I'm not
Absolutely.
worried, because we're giving them, with all of the phonics, what about the meaning? What about reading for context, and we're talking about, well, if they need to be able to read to unlock those things at higher level, yes, absolutely, I agree, and I do think phonics is a piece of that puzzle. I think that's important, but I want to make sure that our kids are able to be critical thinkers and that they can read for meaning in context.
Okay, but here's the problem that I struggle with. The dibble scores were good. I used the composite dibbles, not a piece of it, not just word recognition. Okay, not nonsense word fluency. I used the composite grade level where kids were at, and they were pretty good. The state test is a whole different ballgame that gets taken in grades 3 through 8. The benchmark you're talking about is a piece of the benchmark and part of the reading program, all of which are just indicators. Okay, they're all indicators. And you can pick out from a test what you want to pick out from. But clearly, my goal, and the reason I'm saying this is because this issue we're having about language arts, I don't want to be the bearer of bad tidings, but we need to unlock the math code too, folks. Because we're not doing well in math. Not at all.
The time's going to be.
Well, last year we were told, last year we were told to throw out the math.
We were.
No,
Forget
no.
about math and science. Let's
I
focus
didn't
on
do
math.
anything to math.
So
All I'm
that's why
doing-
maybe
I-
math is down.
It's not you.
No, I had,
It's-
the first day I moved here, I signed the check for our math program, everyday math. We've had it for 3 years.
Well,
There,
this meeting is about textbooks. Am I right? Textbooks and the way on track. And I want to make sure we're in compliance with the law.
And we need to give our kids leveled readers. We were instructed not to give them any text with meaning
Do you
until
use A to Z?
January, and from
Yes,
first
we
grade,
use it.
as a first grade teacher, we need to take them from a level 4 to a level 16 that is in context.
4
that
to
is in-
16 with the standards,
And that's a
DRA.
minimum, and our kids, of course, they're not even coming in at 4, but I'm really scared. I can't get my kids to a 16 if they're not reading level readers until January.
That's
I'm
right.
really worried for my kids.
Well, let's say this. I'll be glad to meet with you. I'd like to see what you do in your program. I've heard good things about you. Your administrator talks highly of you. I'd be glad to meet with you. I'd be glad to talk with you guys about what we're going to do.
I just want to make sure we're in compliance with the law.
Well, we are. We have all the books we need. We have a book for every single
Equity.
kid in the district.
You mentioned that
Yeah.
K-2 teachers
Erica,
aren't
say
state
it
tested.
again. I know,
We
there's
have
not equity.
one
I don't
piece
speak
puzzle.
much, but
That's
I just
not
want
a
to say that equity among children and equity among our staff is so important. And I can't give one child this amazing curriculum that's standard and not give the other child that same curriculum. It's not fair.
It's illegal and immoral, is what it is.
Okay.
And us as teachers, we don't think it's fair and we want to be fair. That's part of what our job is, to teach
We'll
community
meet and
values.
we'll talk, but we need to have a plan.
And
Because
also, new teachers don't have the curriculum, I don't know if it's been ordered, you know, the new
Yeah.
teachers did not get
I didn't get
any-
my set and I'm a veteran.
any of the benchmark stuff, so it's still, if it's out there, maybe it's coming in the mail, I
must
don't
be
know.
at your
but
building.
It's, no
Gotta
one
be
has
at your
seen it
building.
yet. So
No.
that is, I think we
It's
are
not in order.
out of compliance with that as well.
You mentioned that K-2 is not tested state-wise, but ELs are tested through LCAP.
LCAP,
And I administer that as well.
Yep.
And I sign my life away saying I won't discuss the details of what's in the test. But what I can say is that Benchmark, because it's a designated ELD program, the component that I use, adopted, it does address the standards that are tested. And unlocking the code, which is what I'm being asked to use for ELD, both the decoding and the grammar components, does not address all of those standards. And so those EL kids that are being tested, K2, are not necessarily getting everything that they need. And to become redesignated or reclassified, that's the first criteria, is a 4 on LPAC and no lower than a 3 or a 4 in any of the domains. So that's the concern that I really have for
Addressing
for
the population
69
as well.
ELs at our school.
There's something that they're not sharing with you at their site, that the principal and Chris and Tina, they're coming in with clipboards expecting them to be on an unlocking the code lesson anytime they walk through that door. So how could they ever, I mean, they're in fear all the time. So if they were to try to use Benchmark, if they were able to fit that in their schedule, they're going to be made to feel horrible because they're not doing it at that exact moment. And so there's not a lot of freedom as a teacher to kind of schedule their day in a way that they feel meets the needs of their students.
And we don't know.
And that to me, it bothers
So
me.
it'd be nice if we could have a review, maybe a meeting that discusses what's on the walkthrough form. It's, administration number 1. So
I'm
we
not
want to
real
know
privy
what
to the
is going
form
on
either.
when they come in through the clipboard, so we can have a conversation about that feedback.
Again, I would be glad to sit down with a group of you to discuss it, to have a plan. Because
It would be
In
great
lack
if we
of a
have like
plan.
really serious no time for meetings.
I'll make time for you.
Including grade level.
On our time.
Which is crucial.
We haven't had a
Their
grade
grade
level.
level has been taken
We
away.
have not had a grade level
The
meeting
board
yet.
needs to do
I've
their
not been
job.
able to meet with the 7 of us, my 3 new teachers, as a meeting
New
about grade
teachers.
level meeting. Our first grade level meeting is scheduled for September 24th. September 24th.
And they are struggling. That means it's on our backs, on our own time, to mentor them. Just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public
Superintendent
comments?
comments.
Pardon me?
Superintendent comments. Thank you. Oh,
Tessa's here now.
you're up. You're ahead of me.
Me, okay, I apologize for being late. Thank you for accommodating me being able to speak. That was really well-spoken sentiment of some of the feedback that I've been given. But I'd like to start with some of the successes. I have heard that the high school is pretty excited about the WASC process this year. that it's going very well and they have high hopes of passing it and not having to deal with it again for the next 6 years. At Blosser, we had a brunch with all our staff, and Paula, our site board person, was there, and everybody had an opportunity to talk with her, which was just a really great way to build communication and make sure that we're sharing the ideas of what's happening at the site with our board members. Sherwood reported that Robert had been there and joined them for lunch, brought popsicles for all the kids. That was really nice. We really want to keep these lines of communication open with our board members and our teachers at each site. As was mentioned, back to school nights were well attended at all the sites, and there were some conflicts with being able to make it to multiple sites, so I'd like to see us do something with that next year. The WTA is going to be covering all of the snack bar shifts for the October 11th homecoming game so that parents can enjoy the event. And it was really cool to see everybody pitch in for that. We're starting some community outreach. We are having a business of the month as educators, and we have a public Facebook page that goes out. It's available for the community. You're welcome to join it. So this month is JD Red House, and any teachers that go in there and purchase something in their shirt, take a picture, put it on the Facebook page, and we're going to have a drawing for a prize for that. We're just trying to make sure that our community knows who we are and where we're from and what we're doing. So this is building relationships again. One of our challenges that we had was that the district breakfast and the WTA luncheon happened on the same day this year. It also happened last year, and it's a hardship because it's a work day. And so when you have a couple hours for breakfast and an hour for lunch, there's not much work getting done. And I really, typically, it is on different days, but for the last 2 years, it hasn't happened that way. And I'm hoping to get that in the minutes so we remember to schedule them on different days next year. I know there were
It has to do when you can get people here. I also did give you guys an hour and a half for lunch for the new teacher in-service that you do with new teachers, which used to be a half hour, which I accommodated the hour and a half. And
awesome.
It was kind of like, let's work these days out.
Yeah.
I can't always get every presenter who would come on the day we want them. So everybody's competing for some of those same days.
I think typically we've been able to figure out a way to have the breakfast on one day and the lunch on another, and I'd just like to see us try and do that that way.
I agree.
Another thing that happened over at Brookside this summer was that personal appliances were removed from the classrooms because of wiring issues. The problem was because the people were not communicated with. They were just removed from the rooms and put into the maintenance shed, and that was very disturbing to a lot of people who had to go pick it up, and it wasn't in a clean, well-kept area. I think it's all been resolved at this point. I sent emails to both Terry, who had removed the appliances, and to Dr. Crossman, asking that in the future that we have some communication with the employees before personal items are removed. My concern at this point is that we get that wiring fixed before some silly kind of situation comes up where all teachers can't have personal appliances because it wouldn't be fair to Brookside. Heard a couple rumors, and I just don't want to go down that path. I just would rather see us
Let me be
fix
very
the
honest
wiring.
with you. The wiring at Blosser is better than Brookside.
Okay, so it's a non-issue that it's not going to be removed from other sites?
No, it has to do totally with the draw that happens in a room. You're in a really old building that when you plug stuff in,
No, I mean at the other sites.
That's not the plan.
Okay, good.
No,
I'm
but
trying to
the
get-
issue really comes down to your building, Brookside's building is really old.
Yeah.
The high school's gone through a lot of renovation for electronics because there was so much technology that went in. if you had the same level of technology, your wiring would have got upgraded to that level, and it hasn't. But that's an expensive proposition when you start talking about rewiring that elementary building.
It must need to happen if we can't have coffee pots.
Well, it needs to happen just as much as the whole west wing needs to go away.
The West Wing. You know.
At Brookside.
Oh, okay.
That whole west wing needs to go away. It needs to have Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz come and take it away.
Okay.
Because we can only
I'm happy
use
to hear
3 of
that
the
this
6
isn't going to
rooms.
be a domino effect. That's
Yeah.
important. As you heard, the Tuesday short day concerns so far, we know that we're just in the initial stages. We know that we're just trying it out, and we're all optimistic and hopeful that it is going to be helpful, because we do appreciate the extra time with students. I've already heard that from many teachers. The grade level collaboration not happening at Brookside until September 24th is really huge, especially with all the new teachers they have there. And at another site, we have teachers that are unwilling to stay late to have staff meetings for supplemental pay. So you're getting some educators are going to staff meetings, some are not, because it's optional at that point after a full day. And supplemental pay just doesn't seem to feel like enough to some of the educators. And that creates a little more disconnect between your staff and your administration when we're not all on board there at the meetings. And last but not least, Dawn made a request, I think it was in May or June at this meeting, that the leadership, the WTA leadership, start meeting with the superintendent so that we can build our relationship and our communication with you. And I just want to remind you that we're interested and willing to do that if we can schedule that into your busy.
Send her an email.
I will.
I'll be glad to do it.
Wonderful.
She runs my calendar.
Wonderful.
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. My comments. I'll deal with the drinking fountain one first. Okay. The district received a grant for about $200,000 for drinking fountains. The unfortunate part is it's a federal grant. It is like moving a glacier. And so I finally have confirmation from them. They received our grant. Everything's good. The people who are going to help us administer and get it now have that, and they're selecting a vendor. So the fix is coming. My problem is I'm dealing with federal money.
Okay.
But when we get done, you'll have 10 to 12 filtration stations that are the new ones, not the old one we have in the cafeteria, the new ones, very similar to what Blosser has. At Blosser, the water was so bad that we had to shut all the at Brookside, we had to shut all the drinking fountains off in the room and then go in and find out what part we had to fix. And they have the same issues. We had 4 drinking fountains go down the first week of school. When the city flushes the lines, Brookside unfortunately is at the end of the pipe, and it clogs up the filters in there. We had to go buy 4 new filters. And sometimes I actually found out from Jeannie, who called me and said, hey, there's a bunch of drinking fountains not working at Brookside. You know, because Dan doesn't run around checking drinking fountains every day. But she emailed me that, and I went over, I called Terry, we went over, we had to go to Ukiah and get 3 new filters and turn 3 of them on immediately. But it's a problem. There is a plan in place for each building, including Sanhedrin, to put in filtration stations that are chilled, filtered, and cooled. And you have 4 of them at Blosser, and you're going to have, I think, 8 when you're done. But we had to do that at Blosser. We couldn't fix the problem at Blosser. So we had to go through and shut all the drinking fountains off in the room and put those filtration stations on 4 corners. So we're going to put 4 more out there to fix that. It's the problem with having really, really old buildings. You know, it's an electrical issue we talked about. It's a water fountain issue. It's the curtains are a disaster in a lot of these classrooms. We're talking about at Brookside, trying to use a film over the windows because the curtain stuff's just not working. And so we're talking about, do we put a film across it, you know, like the tinted window scenario? We have to do something. And so, you know, that's one of our major issues, is to talk about facilities and upgrade.
Real briefly, Mark, on the high school portion, is there a way to make that one drinking fountain available more?
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. We need to get that out. That needs to be open all the time. I don't know why they lock it down. They close the kitchen up and lock the door. I mean, there's no reason it can't be open.
I mean, at least it's open during break, whatever break times there are, that would allow students enough time.
Well, it just needs to be open all day.
I tend to agree, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's not hard. That's an easy fix.
Close it because they leave, and it's an issue, according to people I spoke with last year when there was a similar concern about the place being locked up, no access. It's just their idea of a precaution to make sure that their cafeteria and their office and their area all stay safe. So if you can fix it, I mean, it should just, well, exactly, that does concern people.
I'm not worried. If the tail doesn't wag the dog, they need
I'd
water.
hope in that area, but that was the
A couple other things.
There's a way to accommodate that.
Yeah. I want to make sure people know that the school has an app, Willits USD. If you've not downloaded that, you need to download that. That is a 80% of the people are going to use the app instead of the web page. So for example, if I wanted to take a picture of the board meeting, I'd take a picture, make a comment, I put it on Facebook, Twitter, and the district live feed all at the same time, simultaneously. There's 2 other buttons where it could go voice message and text message to everybody. That's our call-out system. And so it works really well, and we're trying to get into the modern age because keeping up web pages is really hard.
Is the all-call part working? Because I know I've always gotten the all-calls from the principals at whatever site I'm at. I'm not getting them this year, so
All calls
I've
in
been having
regards to,
So like Nancy does a message on Fridays, Maria does one on Sunday nights, you know, where they send out to the parents, but the teachers usually get them. I'm not getting it anymore, so I don't know if it's not working and you just gotta go on the app to get it, or.
Parents aren't getting them either.
Yeah, I think there's some, and I think the communication portal's been shut down. Like, I used to be able to send messages to my students.
Parents are getting them, the staff though, if you're not, go ahead and go to your site and figure out, they can tell you whether they have the right number, they might not. But the staff, I have on my to-do list to talk to Jennifer because, we don't have a way to access the staff. It's not a group.
Yeah.
And she can do it really easy.
And is there gonna be a way that the teachers can message the parents? Because we used to be able to do it through the Aries, and that's been closed to us.
how did you message them through Air?
Through the communications. Not everybody knew how to use it. I figured it out, and I used to use it.
News to me, I didn't know you could use
Yeah, we
Aries to
could.
message.
Actually, a lot of the Bechtel staff did use it.
But it's not available now.
Is it
At least it's not to
open
me.
now?
It's not, well, Aries is not available. Communications through Aries is not available. Right.
I'll find out.
Yes, that is a question for Jen.
Is that something
Thank
that we made a choice on, or is that something that just sort of happened and nobody really realized it?
No, when we changed to the website, the communications part of Aries was closed or not used.
But it might be because Apogee has a different way to do it.
Yeah, Apogee
And so-
Apogee is our call-out system.
Uh-huh.
It took the place of that.
Yeah.
Apparently, they've not shown you that part of it, but.
Right.
Okay.
I do believe that, and you have a way to link a web page to it and all that kind of stuff too.
Because I mean, like when it's a field trip and you want to make sure all the parents got the notice, you know, because you can send it 5 times and the parent still doesn't get the notice. So it's nice to
Margaret,
send
I think there are
message.
some kinks being worked out because I know like the first couple times I got it 2 times on a Sunday, and then it went text and voicemail and email 2 times on that Sunday, you know, so.
That's what
I think there are always kinks
where
to be
it was
worked out.
smooth for 3 years, and all of a sudden.
And it doesn't show staff on that app either, so if a parent wanted to like, I think,
does.
get a hold of, not
I
on the
think
app.
that
Not at Blosser anyways.
Well,
Right,
you'd
so
have
it
to
might
set
be
that up,
site-specific.
whoever's doing your webpage needs to put
Oh.
that in.
Mhm.
Okay.
I want to caution you, when you do that, it becomes a public email.
Okay.
I'm just, George sent out stuff a while ago about that. It becomes a public email. And so you want to make sure you understand that. I mean, I don't have a problem, mine's out there, and it is, but if you do that, it becomes a public email that can be used and have stuff sent to it. So,
I don't mind that.
I don't either, I don't have any choice, but.
If a parent needs to get hold of me,
Yeah,
I want
but
them to.
teachers actually do, buildings have a choice about publishing their staff emails.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me get to two other ones. The PA system is working much better. We've got our system is in place. We can page throughout the building. So for example, at the high school, if I call 25 and the room number, I can talk to the teacher immediately and we can have a conversation and hang up. That works at each building. I know that the tech's working with the building principals on how to do that. So it allows the teacher to not have to run over and answer their phone. It allows us to set up paging zones. So it should be much better. Sherwood, since I'm the only one who can talk, I guess, for Sherwood, but Sherwood's going great. We have 62 kids enrolled at Sherwood. We met today with Chris Wilkes, our fire person here, and the fire chief from Brook Trails. We're making sure out at Sherwood that we have a fire plan in place. One of the things they noted about our site at Sherwood is it's an extremely good place to do, let's not stay in cover, what do they call it, Alex?
Shelter in place?
Shelter in place. Yeah, shelter in place, because it's a very open area, very defensible space. We're looking at creating more defensible space around the building. The issue at Sherwood is getting a bus back and forth if there's a fire. You can't really take a bus all the way out to Sherwood to 101. We could take a van. I wouldn't be real excited with driving a bunch of kids in a van that way. It could be done. But, that's the issue at Sherwood is we're a secluded site. And so we have to have a plan of what we're going to do. And so we put a lot of good things in place. We put a bus radio out there today so they can communicate with the bus and the radio. So we're putting a nice plan into place for them.
Is there an AED on site?
No, there is not.
Might be something to think about at some point in the future.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done. I'll let us go on.
Anybody we miss? Okay. Moving on. Public comments on the consent agenda items?
I have some questions on some of those, like number 10 and especially number 9, and sort of number 14.
So pick one and go.
Oh, okay. All right, well, we'll start with number 9. And my number 9 concern is that it talks about how if a person has a complaint and they want to, go in and actually follow the process of the complaint, the plan is to go to the superintendent. And my concern is when the issues are with the superintendent, I don't see anything that says superintendent's designee or that there's a committee or any kind of guarantee that people can go before the board. And so I don't know why that is.
Well, most of these policies would have, or could have in there, that that issues like that are referred to the board president.
Okay, but this one it sort of doesn't. So I didn't know if that was like, it's just left out, or if it's considered given.
I think it's an assumed hierarchy.
Okay, now I sort of thought that, except that I have past experience with assumed
Any complaint
hierarchies.
regarding the superintendent shall be usually filed in writing with the board. The board shall consult with legal counsel or appoint an appropriate agent to conduct the investigation.
Okay, because that's
Are you at the
It's I'm at 10, right? It's a BPAR 1312 when?
Yes.
Oh, okay, and so that was kind of the concern, because that's what it says, but when you go into what is written,
Go into the red that you're looking
yeah, all
at
the
has
red
all
is
the
the
emissions.
writing.
Please go just beyond that.
Skip the red stuff
Skip
if
the
you want
red
to.
and just go to the block. That's where Alex is reading. That's the new, how the policy will read.
Okay. Okay, so all of them will just go then for it's as if a decision is appealed to the board, the superintendent, or designee.
Well, I should back up just a little bit. First things
Okay.
first is, in any complaint process, the first step is to try and resolve it at the lowest.
At the lowest. It
possible.
follows the regular complaint
Exactly.
procedure, right?
So as an example,
Okay.
if somebody has a complaint about the superintendent, they should first approach the superintendent and attempt to deal with it with the superintendent. If you
Okay.
can't, if you don't receive satisfaction at that level, then a letter or email or even a phone call to the president of the board, and we'll handle it from there as best we can. At least we can determine whether or not an investigation needs to take place or whatever the case may be. But we will make every reasonable attempt to satisfy whatever that complaint might be.
Okay, and so if a person had a complaint and they took it to HR instead, HR should have directed it to
Of course,
the
it depends on the
superintendent?
nature of the complaint.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, if it was something that had to do with something significantly illegal or sexual harassment, things like that, you're not required to go take it directly to the individual.
Right, that, I understand
So
that.
again, depending on the nature of the complaint, but there is a process to be followed.
Okay.
And you have to remember that if it's an employee or a union member, that they have certain protections as a union member, where confidentiality, right to counsel, right to union representation, and all that is part of the program. So it depends greatly on the issue.
Okay, so maybe what I'm asking then is that the complaint procedure and the association procedures supersede the board procedures, or how do those fit since they're not all the same?
Well, the contract is approved by the board.
Right.
So the contract is step one. Step two is board policy, because board policy is covering things. It's, for example, the same thing happens with student discipline. The high school handbook covers day-to-day operations. If something gets beyond the scope of the handbook, it then can come to me and eventually to the board. If in regards to an employee issue, the process is very clear. You work through the union first with their representation and with our HR. And if it's a matter of confidentiality because it's an allegation instead of an absolute fact, there's some privacy issues and all that. We have to follow that first. Then we follow, because that's labor law. Law always supersedes board policy.
Okay.
And the board policies we're dealing with right here are, these are updates that are basically steeped in recent changes in law.
Yeah, I noticed where most of them said that that was a change, but this one I didn't see that. Okay, all right. I have a question about transportation fees, and it sort of fits both of those transportation concerns.
What
Number
number is it?
14 and number 10. The first one talks about how you have to, well, it says here that the criteria for the board policy is that it's based on a financial need. It's kind of like excusing people from having to pay fees. Okay, and so for transportation and things. My concern about that was just that it didn't seem like we charged anymore for sports or anything like that.
Correct.
So kind of how does this fit anything that,
This basically comes into play if we do choose to start charging for something.
or if you start over
Right.
again, it's just like a little insurance deal.
We do not charge athletics or the high school for transportation. If Ann takes her kids on field trips, we no longer charge Ann's PTO for the bus to do that.
Right.
That should be a district expense. That's us doing things with our kids, not parents gotta go sell chocolate bars so we can go on a field trip.
Oh, okay, so that's just
I
sort
made
of,
that change
I want to know at the beginning.
because I believe that to be correct. Just like fees for athletics.
However, if we did decide to change that and start charging fees for whatever transportation, we would have to follow this policy.
Oh, okay, so that's why it's set up. Oh, okay, I just misunderstood that thinking, I thought we didn't do that anymore.
If we had a summer group who was not attached to the school, if they were not a school group and they wanted to use a bus, we would do a per mileage, charge them for the driver kind of thing.
Okay, that's sort of the number 14 one though, right?
And we were doing some of that prior to that. Kids Club used to fall into that in the summer to bus to the pool.
Okay. Okay, is that, in addition to that, just because it's in my head, does that also relate to like the Nuestra Alianza program? They don't have a bus, but were they to decide on a bus, are they considered, because my granddad used to do one, okay, so would they be considered under that policy, that they would have to pay whatever the cost was, or are they considered a part of the school, since it's only
they're
students
not.
from our district?
No, they are not considered part of the school. We don't pay for the program, we don't do their bills, we don't do their supervision.
And so is that
None
why
of that.
the district doesn't have a specific contract with them?
I do that intentionally so we don't have to do a financial agreement. We choose to allow, I view them like the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts can use our facility, we never charge the Boy Scouts to use our facility. I don't charge New Westra, even though we could, because they're not a school group, we don't. And just like the custodial services, that's what I was telling you when you talked about that. I can't just give them custodial services and not charge them. I have expenses to do. I can't spend taxpayer dollar money on something that's a summer program that we're not in charge of or responsible for. What we did was change the hours of our people at the site so there would be somebody present to make that happen.
Well, I understood they paid for custodial services. I saw checks.
They paid
so-
for custodial services only for the program they did.
Right.
Just that program night stuff. They don't pay weekly for it.
They did.
Did they?
They paid for
Yeah.
custodial weekly services. They
Okay.
did not pay for using the classrooms and all the other charges that could have
Right,
happened.
but they did pay for, because that's the paperwork I saw. And so I was curious about that, only in, is that something that under this policy then extends into transportation, charging them for how much it costs? Although they're not asking, don't misunderstand, this is not a request for transportation, nor does anybody in the program think of requesting
I
that.
guess you have to look at this from the
But-
standpoint, is this a gift of public funds? We'd have to be careful that we're not crossing that border.
Yeah, and I think that it would, just because there are other programs also happening at the school that are receiving similar benefits and not all of them even pay.
It might be
So
one of those things
I-
where we have to go back and talk to legal and ask them whether or not this is something we can do.
Oh, okay, but they won't come under this unless they have some sort of contract.
The most blatant example happens in the summer. Spencer's a soccer player. They play summer soccer games. They go to other schools and tournaments and all that stuff.
That's a club soccer.
It's a club, it's not the team, they can't even have the official team. If I were giving them buses to use from the school and a driver, I can't really do that.
Well, they pay for it if you did.
They would have to
Wouldn't
pay
that-
for it.
Okay, so that's what would fit under
Right.
this. Okay,
Yeah, I
that's
can't give that
perfect.
service away because it's not part of our program.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that clarifies what I needed.
Yeah.
And then my last thing about the complaints concerning district employees, are there safeguards built in that allow people the opportunity to complain or do whatever they're gonna do? Or well, it's usually complaints, no one goes to you with thank yous, I guess. But then those, I'm sorry?
You are correct.
Well, I'm sure they thank you, just maybe not as blatantly as they don't thank you.
I thank you.
Yeah, there you go, he thanks you all the time. So, but the issue is that the part I didn't see is that there is no retaliation until I went and read some of the rest of it. And then it's more implied than anything else, but
Are you talking about an employee?
Yeah, I'm also talking about people from,
Okay,
yeah,
well-
employees, they're employees.
Well, that's easy. That doesn't need to be school policy. That's
Okay,
California
that's the law.
labor law.
Yes, it's very clear.
Law always
Oh, okay.
supersedes contracts, always supersedes board
Okay.
policy.
Okay,
Yeah, it's kind of like
I just want to make sure we're all.
the Constitution supersedes California's
Everything.
Constitution. It's
Yeah,
just-
slows me
That's how
down.
it goes.
It's okay, yeah, all right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was kind of well understood.
Anybody else with
Thanks.
questions, comments on consent agenda? With no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a
I'll
second?
it, Yeah.
A second. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Passes. I'm not having one hand.
It's about there. Get a page turn.
And I'm mostly left-handed.
I have water with me.
Let's see, we are down to item C, oral recommendation regarding salary or fringe benefits. That speaks to the contract with the superintendent. And under Ed Code, I don't recall what number, it requires me to orally state what the basics of his contract are. The basics of his contract are, he is under contract for 255 days, is that correct? It's right around there. Full 12 months, full-time. His,
It only feels like.
I can feel like 250, but it's
in
230.
closed session, we voted 4-1 to approve the superintendent's contract for another 3 years. His salary is $160,000 per year. His health and welfare benefits are the same as in the WTA contract. The only anomaly, if you will, is a 5% per year annuity that's paid out once each January in favor of the superintendent. And essentially that's intended to offset the difference between his retirement, what he would get based on the fact that in California, things are a bit different. But boils down to those are the basics of his contract, and his contract, I believe, is public.
And just to reiterate, I just want to emphasize a couple points. I took out the merit pay because merit became a problematic thing to even talk about in the state. And so I just eliminated that, so we don't have to have that arduous conversation about how that all works. I just made it all the same. In California, I have a limited income for STRS. There's a cap on what I can be invested in STRS and what the district pays on it. And so what I'm asking for is just to make up the difference of what I would every other employee gets in STRS, because they get their full amount of their wage taken to STRS, and I have a limit on mine. And it's because of when I moved into California and the rules. And so I added 5 days to my contract as well, and I'm at the same wage. Same wage I have been for the last 3 years. I intend to be for the next 3 years.
I have a question, by the way, that it deals with the part of your vacation time. Okay, so are you at those 43 days or whatever it is that you're not supposed to surpass for taking vacation that you didn't take? Or are you taking vacations, and there's a chunk in your contract about vacation time?
Honestly?
I don't, okay, I don't know.
No, I don't need to know what it says.
Oh, okay.
I've never even remotely come close to taking my vacation. I mean, Teresa can verify that.
Oh, okay.
I'm here all the time.
Oh, okay, so you sort of know then, I guess, that you're capped at your days and you can't add to them or do any of the other
I think
stuff.
I took 6 vacation days this summer.
Okay, well, kind of my question that goes with that is that, let's pretend that in 6 years you leave the district, you won't be able to take more than that same 43-day cap
That is correct.
to apply to the retirement or whatever, right? Isn't that why that's even a big deal?
If he doesn't use, once he reaches that cap, he no longer accrues sick leave or vacation
Right.
time.
And the accrued time that isn't used
Is
is
lost.
beneficial to, Oh, it doesn't
It's
attach
lost.
to his
It's lost.
retirement or anything
It
else?
has no benefit whatsoever to it.
Oh, okay.
Once he
I'm sorry,
reaches
I
that cap,
misunderstood.
he better take some vacation time,
I would be
otherwise.
smart, yeah. Oh, okay.
And I'm not going to, but I'll have it.
Either way, I didn't understand that part,
But,
thanks.
yeah, I'm not concerned about vacation time.
Oh, it's because you live in Willits, it's all the vacation.
I
I like it here.
He's in a vacation spot already.
Talks about that 44 days.
Compared to where he came from?
Well, I knew
Yeah.
that, I just thought it was applied like any other, you know, like when I live with sick leave, you know, it goes to my retirement.
only have one left. I gotta go to Hawaii. I've been in every state but Hawaii, so I got one
Well,
left.
pick a vacation. Okay, thank you.
So, in the past, you've gotten a job performance bonus, is that correct?
I took it out.
That's what you meant by the merit pay?
Yeah, I took it out and just put it into my pay, because for 3 years, we've had this big discussion about when you do it, how you do it, what it's like, and the state of California doesn't like merit pay.
Okay.
And so I eliminated it because
It was
Well,
tied to his satisfactory performance on his
Right.
annual evaluation.
Right.
And so now it's not tied to anything, it's a given, or a guarantee, or
Uh-huh.
whatever word you like.
gone.
It's
Oh,
gone.
it's gone.
Well, sort of, it's attached.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's both.
it's just vocabulary.
It's a different way of looking at it, is really the question.
Exactly.
But
How is it attached? What
Well, because every year there will, I'm sorry, it's your contract.
No, that's fine.
yeah.
It's just every year, there is a 5% that goes into like a sheltered annuity.
That's his annuity.
Right, well, but that's where that, if I'm
That's
not
keeping
wrong,
me
that's where
whole
that
in
comes from.
stirs.
Gotcha.
I don't see that money at all. It goes into an annuity, and I did that because I don't want to ask for a raise. I want to stay right where I'm at. I'm not asking for that. I just want to stay whole in retirement, and the way to do that is through an annuity, which nobody pays taxes on. I don't pay taxes, the district doesn't. There's no stirs even taken out of it.
So as long as you do your job, you automatically get 5% a year put in your.
That is my, well, as long as I have my contract.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I took
So
out
it's
that
not
whole
even
thing
job
about
performance.
merit because every year the attorney would have some crazy thing, call it adjusted salary augmentation or something. Nobody even knew what it meant. California's not big on merit pay, so I took it out because it's something that didn't work. It came in my initial contract before I moved here.
Right.
And I removed it because it's not working well.
You remove the language, but you're still getting it. Right. Okay.
Trina, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no need for board action on this. It's informational.
You have to do item D to ratify the contract.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, for C, correct. No action. It's just
All right, so we are at item D. I don't know that was different because we've already voted on it. but-
It's just saying the ratification that you met in closed session, you agreed or took action. You took action in
You did.
closed session, and now you're out here to ratify it, just like we do with our unions. We have to ratify their contracts. You as a board are now going to ratify after you publicly disclosed his contract.
So I guess my real question is, do we need to take another vote on the contract?
We take another vote to ratify it, yes.
Okay, so,
Ratifying meaning that we've discussed it, and we've already decided.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're approving the contract as it was just disclosed to the public.
okay, so I would entertain a motion for item D.
I move we ratify, we approve item D.
Okay. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I need to be clear. Okay, so it's common knowledge, I voted no inside. Now that we're out here, I'm not voting yes or no, I agree with the contract. I'm voting yes or no, we just have discussed it and we're ratifying it, right?
Correct.
Am I clear?
Correct.
Oh, okay, because otherwise it seems sort of silly. I get it, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of the MOU with Willits Kids Club, ASES for 2019-20. Is this an annual agreement we do?
Yep. This is very similar to previous years. The only thing I will say about that is one of the things we did with Kids Club is that Our tech guys hooked them up with internet access. They were paying a lot of money for it. Those facilities are on our site. And so we don't use our internet from 3:30 on like they do. And so they purchased the stuff and we put it together. Richard and Dakota put together a directional beam, so after school, we gave them bandwidth to the internet, so they didn't have to keep paying for it. They're our kids. It's on our site.
Actually, Dakota and Dan did it. I had nothing to do with it. I'm not going to take credit for that.
But we gave them internet. We didn't unload the bandwidth on them. They have a limited bandwidth of what they need, but we did that as an in-kind service. We appreciate what Kids Club do. We want to help them keep their expenses down. They also, did you guys see they changed something about their policy about how they accept students after school? They did something, and I didn't get the whole breadth of it, but they changed their format because they have a waiting list of who gets in on the waiting list. And they changed it to something that was very favorable for us. So we work really well with Kids Club. They do a great job. I wish they expand. We have a lot more parents who'd like to use it.
So I have a question. How do they screen their employees?
They use the same background check that we use, although they do their own. We are not privy to their stuff, but because they work with kids, they still have to go through the exact same fingerprinting and everything we do.
They also they take the test for like our paras.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, they do an academic testing.
So does the state have requirements for after-school programs as to what they offer? Yeah.
Their ACES grant that they have requires all kinds of things from them.
It's crazy.
Yeah. My biggest issue with Sherwood, or with them is, I can't have Sherwood kids in Kids Club. It's only chartered to do in-town schools. They don't take charter school students either. They don't take Sherwood students because it's out of their area. I seldom have a Sherwood student who'd like to go, but because we bus there now, we bus right back to Blosser. And I've had some parents who wanted to at least get on the list, and they can't.
There's no workaround.
Not without busting up their whole issue. I've met with Eric and tried to work through the issue. We're talking about ways to try and get around it. But, it's a great program. It's full with a waiting list. So even if I had Sherwood have access to it, they'd be on a waiting list.
So it's full with a waiting list. Is that because the facility's just not big enough for them?
That and the staffing they have. They have a ratio they have to maintain. The only way they could expand without adding facilities would be to come over to Blosser and use rooms. There's no waiting list at Bechtel.
Does the grant provide for expanding the program?
No. They're scraping to make ends meet. And we do have several employees, probably 4 or 5, I think, who work at Kids Club and with us. They get additional hours by working there.
If there's need, it'd be nice to see if we can find a way to expand the program so that we can meet all the needs.
Well, and just a little history on their buildings, okay? Their buildings are on our site. And we paid for the DSA distinction of those buildings. So if sometime there were no Kids Club, those facilities could be used by the district right away. We wouldn't have to go through any messing around to use the facility. They've all made DSA inspection. And we paid the dime for that.
It sure has been a wonderful addition to the community to have Kids
Right.
Club available for parents.
I would entertain a motion to approve item E.
I second it. Oh, I move that we approve the MOU for the Willits Kids Club.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to Resolution 20-4, middle school assignment authorizations.
So I have a question. It says, whereas the middle school uses interdisciplinary teams as the primary method of instruction. So can you sort of explain that to me?
Core teachers.
Oh, okay,
That's what
one
it
for
means.
3 classes.
That's
is that
code
what that
word
is?
for core teacher
Oh, all
from the
right.
state of California. Interdisciplinary means that there's a math, science, and a language, arts, social studies coring teams.
Oh, okay. And so how is
So they don't
that-
have to be single subject.
Okay. How is that different than the past? The past, we always made sure that they were single subject types.
We
No.
do this every year.
We do it every year.
Oh. Okay.
This is an annual thing we do every year. The middle school has a combination.
Excuse
One
me.
of the things I changed was I made sure that all of the 8th grade teachers are single subject high school certified teachers. Because I want them to have the rigor of a high school level instruction. And 7th grade is kind of a mix of the two, but 6th grade is all multi-subject teacher.
Oh, okay.
So 7th grade generally has this, some are, some aren't. And 8th grade is all single subject.
Okay.
But this is an annual.
So do I have a motion to approve item F?
I'll motion to approve item F.
I second.
Any further discussion? I believe it's a resolution, so it's a roll call. So, Paula?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Bob?
Aye.
All in favor? Let's see, approval of resolution 2019-20-6 textbook adoption, physical science, grade 9 to 12.
Okay, so is there usually we see copies of these. They're at the high school at the district.
No, it's at the district office. It's been there for months.
Yeah, well, that's, I must have walked by them. I've been there.
You have.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Probably
It's just
5
one
times.
box. It's just
No,
one
got
book.
it. Oh, okay. It's
We
just
did have
Willits.
one person come in. Who came in?
Gee.
Jeannie.
I did. I came and looked
We have
at
one
it.
person. That's a first.
Okay, so they're not softbacks, they're hardbacks?
They're hard.
Oh, I don't know why I read that.
What we buy is we buy hardback classroom sets and PDFs for the Chromebooks.
For the crumbs. Oh, okay, that's why I missed that.
So in other words, when Spencer's in class, there's a hard book they can use, but he also has PDF when he goes home. That's how we're purchasing books now.
So they don't take books home then anymore?
Right. They're not throwing 60 pounds in their backpack.
Okay.
How are they, oh, okay, well, I
So that digital version is still there and a whole lot lighter.
have that go very well.
So I would
Are they getting
entertain a
Chromebooks?
motion to approve item G.
Bechtel has Chromebooks.
I would approve
They do.
item G.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on item G? All in favor? Oh, no, hold on, it is a roll call vote again. Paula? Aye. Jeannie?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Bob? Aye. And myself, aye. And we're at item H, public hearing, sufficiency of textbooks. Education Code Section 60119 requires that in order to be eligible for certain state funding for textbooks, the governing board shall adopt on an annual basis a resolution with respect to textbooks and instructional materials availability, and confirm that each pupil in each school in the district has or will have sufficient textbooks or instructional materials, or both, in each subject that are consistent with the contents of and cycles of the curriculum framework adopted by the state board. The board welcomes public input. I believe we already had some of that today.
And so,
What time is it?
47.
I see the clock disappeared.
6:45.
Why don't you use the clock, Richard?
Why is it me?
You're staged out of the high school. I know, it's in Terry's office. Terry's got like 8 of them in his
I
office.
put up technology, clock is a clock.
So is there any public input on item H?
What exactly are you voting on at this point? Are we confirming that?
This is a list that I send out to all administrators, and then the administrators are responsible to make sure that the site has adequate textbooks that are on this list. Each administrator confirmed to me, and then there's Williams review at 3 school sites, Blosser, the high school, and Bechtel. And all 3 schools passed this year, first go.
Is this the Williams thing, or is this something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
They came in, they've done their book counts and checks already and everything.
So how does that work, though, if they don't have the benchmark ELA books in the classrooms? How could they have passed?
They didn't do a Williams, I don't believe, at Blosser.
The Williams doesn't happen at Brookside, it happens at
Blosser.
And Dr. Crossman confirmed that these are the books used.
Nancy was.
No, this is for Brookside, she asked.
Oh, Blosser.
Okay, so the administrators confirmed that this is the textbooks that are being used at the sites. I'm going to read you all the whereases.
No, I just heard that the Brookside teachers were saying they didn't have those books, so now I'm wondering.
This is saying, whereas the definition of sufficient textbooks or instructional materials means that each pupil has a textbook or both to use in class, take home, and so this is saying sufficient, the board is voting sufficiency or insufficiency, which, you know, but the site administrators have confirmed.
Right. And if we don't, I have to make that, I have to make sure that happens.
So why was Brookside skipped? You said the other 3 schools had checked, but not Brookside.
The county does that, they choose.
The county does it,
They
and
skipped Brookside this year?
No, every year.
We used to have it.
what happened, the best that I can recall, because I asked this question, why is it the same schools over and over? And I wish I could explain this better, but that list is never going to change. It's always going to be those same 3 schools until it's just abolished.
Right. There are 11 schools in the county they go to, and 3 of them happen to be ours.
It used to be tied to our program improvement status. You know, back when we had program improvements, STAR. The accountability measure, the accountability system at the federal level was you were a program improvement school. And that's what the Williams was, that's how Williams targeted those schools. And you didn't take test scores at Brookside, right?
Well, we did, we used to, but we weren't in program improvement when
It
we
started,
stopped
yeah.
the tests.
That's probably why
So
they
we get
stopped
it
going
permanently.
to.
Probably.
Yeah, they never went because they.
Well, they don't have anything that they're tested on at the state level, so they got, and all I can say is I'm still mystified by the fact that county actually pays people to come to a classroom and count books. Even when the kids all lift up their books and they all have one, they still go through the room and physically count them. I'm amazed that we spend that money to do that, but I understand it's a requirement. Doesn't mean it makes sense.
And so when Brookside has an issue, then that's what you already said you were going to look into and take care of? Okay.
Okay. So, any other public comments? Item H.
Like, but if we have the textbooks, but we're not allowed to use the textbooks, the kids still don't have access to the textbooks.
Well, that was part of what we just had the discussion about.
I think we've kind of reached a compromise in terms of hopefully you guys getting together and working out some of these details.
If we don't have, I can't imagine we don't have benchmark books for all of Brookside.
I think what happened was the class sizes are so much bigger this year, some of the new teachers don't.
I'm sure I ordered them, because I signed POs to order a bunch of benchmark materials, like $10,000 worth of books.
Can we look into
Wasn't there
that?
like a faux pas in one of the classrooms where maintenance maybe,
There was. Somebody's classroom, who cleaned their classroom out and the maintenance guys threw out all the good stuff instead of all the bad stuff.
Yes.
So they threw out the wrong set of boxes.
Yes.
Classic.
So that could,
That might be part
you
of it.
don't know, I don't know that it's.
Well, that was a different classroom, but,
But your supplies could have been in there, right? Because
no.
if other classes.
No, that was a
No.
kindergarten room. This is a second grade room, a brand
No.
new teacher. Now we have a 7th class. So if you ordered it, then just maybe email me and we'll find out where it went.
Yeah.
So we'll close the public hearing on item H, move on to I, approval of sufficiency or insufficiency of
More
instructional
discussion?
materials, resolution 2019.
Yes, we have somebody who'd like to
20-3.
Okay, more discussion.
I'm just concerned as a grandparent. I have the understanding that not all the children are allowed to use the state-adopted text, and I'm wondering if that is a Williams compliance issue, if that's something that I should file a Williams complaint about, or...
We just had a big discussion
I
about
know I
that.
had a big discussion about, but I'm wondering if you're saying we are compliant, we have the books,
We do.
and if the children aren't allowed to use the books, is that a compliance issue?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna have a discussion about that.
Okay, I just want to be really clear that I
Yeah.
understood that. Thank you.
And I'll just add at this time that I am so glad you are going to have a dialogue because I felt the passion in the room. And I am delighted that I heard an openness to have a dialogue. I'm just sitting here as a retired teacher and a grandmother and a former board member, seeing that we have a very complicated issue, and I was delighted to hear that we have a willingness to work on it, because I think we can come to finding a solution using the best of everything that we have here.
I agree, I think we
I'm
have the
looking
tools,
forward
we just need to get all the players in the same room.
I don't think there's anybody more passionate than I am about school improvement and our kids doing better. I'm all about doing that. What's the right path? What's the right time? What's the right program? Those are all intangibles. But just continuing to do what we've always done is not working. And we have a problem in math that is as significant as it is in language arts. We have a problem in EL, and we have a problem in ELP. And I think that there's a solution to that. I met with Nancy today for an hour talking about those programs and what can be done to fix and make that better. And I encouraged her to have a staff meeting to talk about that. I just gave her all the data from 17, 18, and 19 SBAC scores. Every classroom, every kid, how many kids passed, what was the average score, all of that stuff. What rooms had ELP kids in them, what were their scores. And I compared that even with 5th grade to how many 5th graders were at grade level in the fall compared to how they did grade level on Dibbles compared to how they did on SBAC. And 70% of the kids who are green in the fall were successful on SBAC. So there's a pretty strict correlation between the two.
Did you find that IXL had an impact on our SBAC scores last year after having implemented it for a year?
I think it had an impact. I think it had a technology impact because they got used to the formatting. Mathematically, it had a minor impact. I think we can do a better job to fine-tune that. But I also, just like when you're talking about phonics for everybody, not every kid needs to be an IXL. The problem with that is, how do you schedule that and how do you do that? And that's what I gave Nancy some suggestions on today, because every kid going to IXL, if the kid's already at grade level in basic skills, it's unnecessary. And I think there's a correlation between EL, IXL, and ELP kids, that we can make something better in our schedule to deal with those 3 issues. And I gave her some suggestions, and I'm not going to spew them because I want it to be you guys at the building and your principal doing it. I'm not going to micromanage it from the back, just like with Maria's schedule is incredibly different than it's ever been. I did that with her. I didn't impose it, I did it with her, and she did it with the staff. That's my plan for Blosser as well. Because you guys have to own it and make it work.
So I would entertain a motion for item I. Based on the data that we have from staff, we have sufficiency of instructional materials.
So I move that we approve the staff report on the sufficiency of instructional materials.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? And this is a resolution vote, once again. Call for the vote, Noah?
I have to abstain. I need to wait and see.
Jean?
Aye.
Aye. Bob?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Aye. Two abstentions.
I'm a little bit late. I still think there's some unanswered questions with this item.
Okay. And item J, public hearing, the local control accountability plan and the Board of Trustees of Willits Unified School District hold a public hearing to receive input from the public matters pertaining to the adoption of the LCAP. The board welcomes public input. And we have a copy of LCAP in here, which is fairly detailed.
So you got our 80-page monster.
Yes.
It is all been red penned by the county, so we can make our local plan look like everybody else, which drives me crazy. But it has all been as they wish done. We put together there's a new piece for the financial budget awareness for parents. There's also a new federal addendum on top of that, which is another 12-page document. We have to do that so we get our federal funds as well. So our LCAPs have been reviewed by the county and approved. We've got or not approved, it got critiqued, we made all the changes, and now we will send it back to them for final approval. And we've done all the stuff that we've been asked to do. And I just want to remind folks, LCAP is not like lotto money. We get freebie money and we can kind of do crazy stuff with it. It's built into our budget. It is designed to be used to do things for the district, most of which we would normally do anyway. 80-some% is tied into staff and benefits and wages. So it replicates our normal budget, because our normal budget's that way as well. So it is a piece we have to justify the funding we receive based on the goals and things we put in there.
Any public comments on the LCAP?
So I have some questions. Is it board's turn yet? Are you talking?
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. I'm curious to see how this affects the budget, the changing of the 1.5 full-time equivalent positions for Brookside to have English language learners assisted and their programs to fit that, and then how it affects how Blosser Lane has cut 20% of their one full-time teaching equivalent.
There's no reduction in staff at any of either of those buildings. In fact, there's an addition.
Right, the staff aren't on, the jobs they do are different. Okay, so.
And I'm not familiar with the 80-20 you're talking about in EL. That's a building level decision. Nobody came to ask me that question.
Okay, well, it's going to affect the budget considerably for English language learners, I would hope. I mean, you might, behind you there are people.
We don't get enough funding to pay for it to begin with.
Right, well, they're district students. The district should pick up a big chunk. But my concern is that additional funds are allotted for limited English learners, limited English learners, and foster kids, and my other little group, I just forgot their names. Doesn't matter, we know the 3 kids. And since those programs are being changed, the staff in particular, staff that I know about are having their jobs be changed. It's the 2080 that you don't know anything about
I learned about 2 weeks ago, and so I'm pretty sure it'll get to you. And then the 1.5 full-time equivalents that was switched into just a 1 full-time equivalent, that half position was combined with something else, and that person does absolutely nothing to do with teaching groups or doing anything like that for limited English speakers. So what I'm really curious about is, you know, where is that adjustment? I hope it's not there, so that you're considering that that money will be spent after all back on
Anything
these
that
kids.
was adjusted this year is not sitting in LCAP. So
Okay, so
it's a living document, you make those changes as you go. It's no different than if you asked me, does Maria have more sections of science this year than social studies for the high school? Because we also fund, well, I'll use a different example for you. Construction. Construction is a CTE program under LCAP. So is Brian doing all construction? Is he doing something other than construction? Those are scheduling and assignment things done by the principal.
except that in that case, it's strictly CTE kids, so to speak. They
No, it's
never
all
receive-
kids.
Well, then that's even a worse example, because our limited English speakers are not all kids. They're a particular population that we're
Right.
supposed to have in addition to what everyone else has. And so what I'm worried about is that if we're cutting their programs, or the amount of teacher time they're going to receive, or the amount of instructional time that was above and beyond, they're going to feel the loss. And since it's a targeted group already, it's mandated by the state, our district is going to put a focus on it. I just want to see that instead of us going backward with that specific population, that we're going to do at the very worst, equal, and at the very best, more. And that's where I am on this deal.
And it's,
And maybe they can help me even
and it's
better.
not about time. That's not my issue with the
Yeah,
program.
that sort of surprised me
It's
because I didn't see
effectiveness
that.
of the program, which we've not been in quite some time.
Okay.
And the issue really comes down to, what I hear from the main teachers is, they're pulling these kids out while I'm doing math. They're pulling these kids out while I'm doing this instruction for EL services. And so it's problematic, and we need to look at the program and how we offer the service. And so
And that
that's
could
kind
be,
of what
but if
I'm,
you cut the personnel that will work with it, then it really makes a
again, I didn't do the assignment of the people, but what I'm telling you is that I'm concerned about where we're going with EL, because I need to see the results that I haven't.
So I can address some of the changes that have been made. I taught fourth grade for 9 years, second grade for 6 years, and this is my 5th year as the ELD teacher and coordinator at our site. My first year teaching, Janie Smith was the halftime person, she retired. My second year teaching, Deborah Doring was the halftime teacher, she retired. My third year teaching, Megan was the halftime teacher, she left the district. But when Megan took on other responsibilities, actually Marette stepped in to fill that role. Last year, Julie was the halftime person, and she left the district as well. One of the ideas that was presented was to have our TK teacher teach that halftime position this year, because the TKers leave at 11:30, all right? And at placement last year, several Ks were placed in her class because we had so many kids enrolling. And it was either implied or stated to me that if another K teacher was hired, those kids would be moved from Cindy's class into a K class. And then she would be available to help me serve the kids. We have 69 kids in our program. Over these last 5 years, I typically serve around 50 daily. The job share partner serves around 20 daily, plus or minus a few depending on enrollment. And so we hired a new kinder teacher, and I inquired about those kids being moved from her class into another K class or spread out into the K classes. And I was told that would not happen. There are only
and maybe my teachers can help me here, there's only 6K students in her class in the afternoon.
Now five.
Five. And so the way that we've been able, or I've tried to make this work, one of the reasons the minutes were cut from 30 to 20 is I simply cannot serve that many kids if we have 30-minute blocks. So that was one of the reasons for the reduction. And Mark is right that there's no longer a minute requirement, a daily minute requirement, but there is a legal requirement that we serve our ELs daily up to the district's discretion. We kind of get some input on how we serve them. So where Paul was talking about the minute reduction, that comes from a place of me not being able to serve that many kids. And the way that I've made it work, and it took so much time looking at scheduling and trying to figure things out, and I had help from my colleagues as well, was to reduce those minutes from 30 to 20 minutes. Dr. Crossman is serving one group for 20 minutes. And then Cindy is helping serve one group, students from her class and another class for 20 minutes. So that might answer some of the questions.
What does a group consist of, the number?
So right now,
I'm a numbers person.
how many numbers? My highest.
So what's it, when you say somebody's doing a group, what does that mean? How many students is that?
It depends. It depends on the needs of the students. It depends on how many students are in that classroom. Right now, today, I started my groups today. I have two very small groups of two. My largest group has 12. And that's actually much higher than what's recommended for designated ELD.
Right. No.
I've structured it that way so that I can get those kids with higher language skills together at a time. It's easier to serve a bigger group if their skills are higher. And then I'm keeping my other groups a little bit smaller.
So 5 or 6
my
would be
other
the
group's
statistical
5 or 6, yeah, maybe 4. Depends on how I can structure them. It depends on classroom schedules.
So a dozen or so who are normally on your caseload are being done by 2 other people?
Yeah, about 10. If there's 5 in that program, and then I think there's 5.
The mathematical part of me says we're still minus 10.
Yeah.
Because if there's, is there 70 kids this year?
There's 69 right now.
Okay. So we're minus 9. Because if they're taking 10 and you can serve 50, okay, we're short a section somewhere.
And then I'm also serving all 4 grade levels with a program that's not adopted and is not truly a designated ELD program.
That's a separate discussion.
Well, it all impacts the program.
Sure.
So I hope that answers some of the questions.
So, I'm a numbers person, and what I see is we have half an FTE serving 5 kids for the whole afternoon. That does not seem cost effective.
I heard it here for the first time tonight. Oops.
So, to me, though.
Mike doesn't run a class with 5 kids in
Right,
it
and
at the high school.
We
so.
lost half an FTE.
Right.
And so we can replace that without additional cost if we just
Well,
spread those kindergartners out to other classes.
You didn't lose FTE, you kept the same amount of staff, it's just how they're being used. And I concur, 5 kids for a half-day kindergarten section's a bit over the edge for us. Yeah.
And it's tricky with unlocking too, because so much of it is nonsense words, which is great for phonics, but it's not great for the ELs who need to be speaking, and they need practice with language and context and meaning. And so when because I know that the student that's performing the best in my class gets services for Mrs. Smith, and that student would really benefit from more of the speaking, talking, listening than more phonics, which he's already excelling at it. He's doing great. He doesn't need more practice with that. He's already, in the blue, he's succeeding. But he does need more time speaking, talking, listening, context, meaning, critical thinking. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle that our kids aren't getting right now.
Well,
I
Oh, and when, sorry, I have to say this, but when we had benchmark, like last year, for example, and my ELD kids were pulled out for their time, which I completely appreciated every minute of that, because they got that vocabulary, they were front-loaded, they had all of that they needed to access the curriculum I was doing in the classroom with that. So it just was huge. They would come in with confidence like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know we did that in ELD. We did that word. I know what that means, because they had help, you know, from their ELD teacher and this incredible connection with her, and what they have visuals and all that support that EL students need. They need all of that, and if I'm ever asked to do that, as you know, that's put on teachers, as you've said before, well, teachers can do all that, well, then we need a lot of training to help those kids, and you know, I don't ever want that program to be taken away, and we don't take advantage
It's not going anywhere. We
of
just
that.
need to
I
figure it
hope
out.
not. I really
But
hope not.
One of the
Because
things that you need to know
It
is
helps
that
them tremendously to have that.
our
support.
EL program in 3-5 is struggling to make its mark, to get the kids where they need to be. Struggling, and it has been for a while.
And part of my concern at that is that we put up little roadblocks to the K2 program, or the TK2 program. It has more issues in the 3-5 program. Then they go to Bechtel Grove, and where you really need long-term academic vocabulary skills, we don't quite have a complete program there. I know that I spoke with a little with Maria about the plan for one. Sounds like a good plan. And then our kids get to high school, and it's like, I hope you're not sinking and you are swimming. And that doesn't always work either. And the biggest issue is the foundation. The biggest, well, okay, that's old news. I don't need to push that.
And you and I are on the same page.
We are, exactly.
We're
which is
not
why
where
I
we
just-
need to be, and we need to look at what we're doing and figure out, I want to look at model programs and see what they do to be effective.
Okay, and that's the
'Cause-
big deal, why it hit me so hard when I learned differently. I'm pleased to see you're equally as shocked,
Well,
because
and
it's
I'm
not
not-
all right.
And again, I don't think what we're doing now is going to be a better solution than what we did a year ago. We need to really figure out the program and make it what it should be, because it's a major part of what we got to get done.
Yeah.
It's a third of our population.
Except that, as you just heard, and I tried to bring up and make clear, if we're gonna make cuts to something that's already not okay, you're guaranteed a bad, bad thing.
I don't dispute that. Like I said, and when I heard this is it, that's what I heard. Okay, I didn't have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Okay, but again, I want to make the EL program work better, but you know, what never gets any play is ELP never gets any play at the board
Well, I
session,
wish you could too, so-
because we're not doing what we need to be doing with that. And so, let's say that those programs need to be addressed. And I need to make sure that we have a program, and I told you, EL's not my wheelhouse.
No, I know.
And I want to bring
But there are
somebody
plenty
who
of
does
experts.
it well.
It's my wheelhouse.
He used
I
to be mine,
understand
let's
that.
see, no. Okay, thanks.
So we're, any further comments on item J, public hearing?
So what we can figure is that since this is a living document, the issues that have come up this evening will be addressed, and if any monetary issues in particular.
It gets changed all year long. We may not spend as much in facility repair. We may have a change already in staffing where a teacher may go out and get more credits and jump up to the next pay scale.
Right, but this is a little more concrete, so what we can expect is that.
This is a snapshot of where we're at on August 20, when we started, to where we think we're going to be at the end of the year, just like our budget.
Right.
Because it's part of our budget.
But in our budget, we're pretty well kept in, well, sometimes we're kept well informed on, okay, I just modified an expenditure.
Nikki makes those
So can we-
adjustments as we get them.
So probably then you're saying I need to wait around for Nikki to come up with when there's gonna be a change? I mean, or some kind of
To
understanding
be
of
honest
the
with you,
programs.
I'm not concerned about the budget part at all. I'm concerned about what we're doing.
But it's.
And whatever the budget is what it is. To
Yeah.
do the right thing, we have to spend the money.
Okay, well then,
So that's
Okay.
irrelevant to me. The budget is what it is. And I'll make the statement I tell everybody who has great ideas. I counted a list of, after the first week of school, I had 12 people the district wanted me to hire additionally when I went to each building. We really need to have this. The high school really needs another science teacher. They really do. We need more paras. We need more this, we need more that.
we increased paras at Shirley, didn't you?
No, same as what we've always done. Now that we have 3 rooms there.
Oh, okay, because I
But
noticed there were.
the reality is that more adults always help the situation. But you can't give out pay raises and fix facilities and make your bills and hire more people on top of it, unless you're getting a lot more funding, which doesn't happen to be the case.
We're modifying the priorities, right?
Right,
Okay.
and so it's a priority,
Yeah,
and it's a priority. That's why I'm vested. I'm super vested in making our scores better and kids do better, okay? You know? Unlocking the code's not free, okay? But if we don't spend our money on things like that, why are we at school? If we're not really vested in making kids learn to read better, that's important to me. I think that's worth the investment, and we have to figure out what we're not gonna do. Just like things like IXL math. I had to add IXL to the budget and not do some things we were doing. Because it's important, it impacts kids and performance, so.
yeah, Excel is something we might talk about too.
Well, we can talk, but you need to have an idea.
Yeah,
Don't-
no, I
don't tell me what you
understand.
don't like, because that doesn't help me.
Well, it starts the conversation probably. The other thing is, for this is, I didn't see, I know I asked Nikki last time, it looked like designated translator time, so that various things are translated, so the translators in Spanish are available at IEPs or whatever else is necessary. Does the district have some sort of plan for either hiring that out or doing anything? I mean, some school sites, used to be, all school sites, had people that could jump up and take care of that. And now it doesn't look like that works quite as smoothly as it used to.
What we did was we took it out of LCAP, because I don't want to budget something that I don't know where we're going to spend or not spend. And so it was, do we spend it, do we not spend it? And if I did like New Estra to do my translation, they want to do a contract for X amount. Well, I don't know if I'm even going to use that much service, and I don't want to put the dollars out, because if we do have to have paid translation, I'll pay for the service for what we need. I don't want to pay for a contract. I don't want to do a retainer for translation services, because honestly, I don't need them at Blosser, I don't need them at Bechtel. I seldom ever need one at the high school. So our need for that is fairly low. But if we do have to have it, we're going to pay and get the service. But I'm not going to sign a contract and obligate us to money that we could use for something else. We were not spending and getting the hours of time to justify doing a contractual agreement.
Okay, well, that's a little hard for me because I would figure it would be up to, not here it is, but as far as amounts of money. But the other thing is, I thought I saw in the budget from the last time, because I did ask Nikki, there was a chunk of money set aside for that. Okay, and so now,
It doesn't necessarily, everything in the budget's not in LCAP.
okay, so if someone has an issue, they just need to go
Right.
to whatever site it is.
We'll do
that
whatever
they're-
translation services we have to do, but I don't want to make, we had a contract to do translation services. And me signing that, it wasn't an amount up to, because they wanted to have a guaranteed amount of money so they could budget it. And so,
Yeah.
for me, we didn't use that much service for a couple of years. We'll pay for the services we need when we need them. And I'm not gonna take the money out of LCAP that could be used, I know, directly for tons of stuff we need to do.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the contract that you had.
Yeah.
But I was aware of it being in the budget as an amount of money, and I didn't know what happened to it. Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks.
No further discussion on the public hearing? Close the public hearing on item J. For item K, adoption of the local control accountability plan, 2019-20. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we adopt the local control accountability plan for
Is there a second?
2019-2020.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. Is there a discussion? I think we've had a lot of it on that particular topic.
That's good.
No further discussion?
So you wanna chime in on that? I didn't think so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, items L, M, and N have been stricken from this budget. I'm sure we'll see them again, or this,
Yes.
excuse me, this agenda, and they moved to next month. Item O, consideration of bond survey with True North Research. We had a presentation last
I
month.
want to slightly amend that a little bit, okay? True North Research gave us a quote, okay? What I really want the board to do is to approve doing a survey. It doesn't have to be them. I want to take some bids. I've done a little homework and found out that I think they're a little higher price than maybe what we need. And so I want to go out and see. I've contacted 2 other firms who also do it. One of them was a really significantly less amount, but I said, you need to send me what you're doing, because I can do Google surveys too for nothing. So I need to see it. But it comes down to a very simple thing. My stance all along about facilities has been this. I can't sit here and say, oh, the facilities are great. They're wonderful. They're not, okay? We can only buy so much duct tape, so much super glue to keep stuff together. We need to have a significant funding source to fix all the electrical at Brookside, to take out the West Wing portables, 50-year-old portables that we bought used. Do I need to say that again? 50-year-old portables we bought used. We need to fix things like the boiler at the high school. We need to fix the parking lot at the high school. We have a $400,000 roof on Blosser that if we don't keep and fix, we're gonna have a ton of problems. If you don't fix the roof, it's over on the inside. It's our newest building that is 30 years old this year. So we've more than lasted the life of that roof. So we have those issues. Nobody in our community will probably dispute the fact that our facilities need to be fixed and repaired. Our issue is, does the community willing to do a bond to help that happen? The only way you know is to ask them. So whether you're in favor of it or not, you ought to be in favor of at least asking the question. Ask the question, and when the results come back, you're ultimately going to decide as a group. If it comes back and 80% are yes, let's do it, we ought to do it. And then let the people decide at the ballot box. If 80% of them say no, then we go, well, we're stuck with what we got. But let's ask the question. Let's find out. Because I have a really hard time going to classrooms that are in disrepair and going, well, sorry, we couldn't do that. I just, we have an obligation, both you guys and I, to provide the best we can. And so that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for an approval to go out and get a survey done to determine if there is an interest in a bond.
Currently, let's see, first things first, let's have a motion to approve. Well, actually, maybe this is better left to a little more discussion about this. Currently, the consideration of the bond survey with True North has a price tag of a little over $23,000.
Yeah.
You think you can do better than that and get comparable service?
Well, I don't know that. I do know that before I just drop 23 on something, I've seen True North survey, it's really well done. I mean, I think it's very well done. I like how they do it. I like their follow-up. I like their reports from it, all of that. But does somebody else do that, what we need, at a significantly less amount?
Their track record is impressive.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, Adam is not tied to that survey place at all.
Right.
That is a survey company. It's one of many you can use. He's used them multiple times. He is not promoting them. He's saying, here's a group I've used before and get a price. Well, their price was really high to me, so I'm going out and getting other bids.
Well, Adam suggested that that price would be right in that ballpark.
He did. He did. I view our bond research to be far less more complicated than they do.
Okay.
I believe it's not, there's no question about facilities or need. The question is, are we willing to do something about it? Based on previous bonds, based on where we're at, based on the economy, all those kind of things. And the issue is, are we interested? I'm interested in finding out.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion, anyone?
We have a question. So then, are we going to make a motion that we consider a bond survey, but not necessarily with True North Research?
Right.
So
Is it going to have a cap as to how much we'd be
So-
willing to spend?
I would say that cap would be the True North cap.
I didn't hear that.
Are we gonna have a cap?
I thought Alex put a figure on it, sorry.
I mean, if I was going to put a cap, I would use the True North.
Well, I certainly am not gonna pay more for it.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, but again, I'm in a position where we need to know, and I want to know who can provide that service at the most reasonable rate.
I'd also be interested in knowing, you know, we have had things like this, and we have people who come and they make these humongous displays, and they're just, it's so much unnecessary fanfare. And it all comes under their price of, here's what I can do for you, including my survey. I really would hope that we would give serious thought if we're gonna spend $23,475 or less, that it's not so elaborate that we feel more
Waste, we're trying to avoid the waste.
waste and, yeah, propagandized, as opposed to just, this is what you get, these are how we set up the results, this is how you get there. You know, I'm really pleased that you are considering other places, because just by accident, I heard about other things, and I thought, good Christ, that's half the price. Goodness gracious, that's half the price, you know, and I didn't get any paperwork that said, and we do this to compare them. And lots of times you do get what you pay for, but that's an awful lot of money.
I talked to 5 other schools who are going for bonds, 3 of which are in our county, 2 are not. I talked to 2 districts who have passed bonds, and they use 2 different firms for their survey. These people were not one of the groups that any of them used. Doesn't mean they do a ton in Southern California, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the results and what results can they give us. And if I can get a better bargain at that, I'm certainly going to do that. So,
what's our timeline in regards to the election? Do we have to do this right now?
we need to get this done if we have any shot. We're already pushing the envelope to get that.
That was pretty well explained to us at the last board meeting.
So do we have a motion?
No, not yet.
Would you like one?
I would.
I move that we approve item O, but delete the True North Research and substitute consideration of bond survey with a price not to exceed the quote of True North Research. Not too complicated?
That's good.
That's all I have. Bob, good job.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did you vote, Paul?
No, I'm thinking if I understand that thing.
We're giving the
So this doesn't commit us
No.
to doing it. It merely says go around looking, right?
Do you want me to read back what I put?
Yes, please.
I put to approve a bond server vendor to be determined, price not to exceed $23,475 as quoted from True North Research.
Which means it'll come back to the board.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think
No.
so.
We're giving the
We are
superintendent.
committing to do a survey.
Right.
That's-
And the only thing that's in question is how much money is going to be spent.
And who does.
And who the vendor is.
And who we do it with.
Mm-hmm.
But we really do agree that if it's 23 and a half, then it's 23,000 yearly.
We will, we are pre-approving
Up to.
a price of up to $23,475. And whether we use True North or not is being left at the discretion of the superintendent.
Yeah, I can't deal with a number like that. No.
Okay. Did we vote? Yes, we did.
We don't want to ask.
4-1. Excuse me?
Yeah, let's go.
Moving forward. So we are at consider bond survey. We are at first reads for items P through U. And so we will acknowledge that we have first reads on those new board policies or updated board policies. And so everybody has some reading to do, if you haven't already. And then
Before we go past that, I know that Board Member King has talked to me. I want to make sure that everybody reads. It's S, isn't it?
Yes, it's S.
Yeah. S is significantly different than previous. And it's about required instructional things that we have to do. And I highly recommend a very serious read on S.
are you recommending changes to that policy?
I'd rather you read it first and then we have some discussion about it.
Would you be good enough to suggest any changes you might think are
So-
warranted prior to the next board meeting?
I can send it out to you.
That would be good.
Yeah, but it is, again, this comes out from school and college and it's compliant with all the new statutes and all that. But you need to know as board members, it does change what we instruct and why we instruct, and it's significantly different. Is that fair enough to say, Jean?
Yeah, so the comprehensive sex education is not your old-fashioned reproduction, this is what happens in puberty and sexual intercourse. It's inclusive, so comprehensive sexual education teaches everything. And because they can't discriminate between different people and the way they identify themselves. So it teaches everything. It's highly controversial. There, in certain, I don't think it's reached Mendocino County yet, but in May there was a significant number of parents that pulled their kids out of school in protest. And they picketed County Office of Education and have repeatedly gone to the State Board of Education over comprehensive sexual education. And the state school board basically pretty much ignored them until the people that appeared before them started reading to them some of the materials that were mandated by the state. And
God bless the people
they
that
ended
success that.
they ended up pulling 5 of those books. And what I came to I got really educated in this as to what the state does, is that I always thought the State Board of Education made up curriculum, but what happens is that the groups that have an agenda sponsor bills and sponsor legislation and sponsor curriculum. And in this case, the Comprehensive Sex Education was sponsored by California Latinos for Reproductive Justice, Forward Together, Equality California, and Planned Parenthood affiliates of California, all who have sort of a political agenda. And I'm really uncomfortable with, when I ran for the school board, the reason I ran is because I really care about kids. And that's always what I have to ask myself is this in best interest of kids? And what I feel about what I have come to understand about this curriculum is it's way too much, way too soon, and it sexualizes children, and I'm really unhappy with it. So, and I'm at this position where I'm having to vote for state law that I think is not in the best interest of children. So I'm asking us for the board to look into comprehensive sexual education and see what you think if you look into it. And what it's taught me is when I see something in the packet here about state law something or whatever, is that pay attention to whether there's any controversy surrounding it and to who sponsored the original legislation, because it makes it was an eye-opener for me. So.
A question to ask would be, talk to legal and find out if there is any latitude for us to make changes to this.
There's always latitude to make changes. You're a public school board. What you can't do is have board policy that is not in step with state law. So one of the notes I just wrote is to find out what are our parameters here. And if truly, which I know there's been a lot of upheaval about this. What has school and college done? Because they're representing districts who have to put this in place. And so have they made any amendments, any adjustments to it? And so
clearly somebody has, because 5 books have been removed, right?
5 books have been removed from the required books, but are still in the suggested books. So they haven't been removed.
So when you look at it, please make sure you read over the part about what is required to be taught and pay close attention at what grade level is requiring that. And to also look at what is a parent's out option if they're not interested in it. So it's...
Excuse me. And Mark, depending on what you find out, if you need more time, or even if you need more time to see where the political wind is blowing and how hard they're going to enforce it, I mean, we don't have to on the next one approve this, not this.
That's one of my questions.
We could put it on the back burner for a while.
Does it have to be in place by 2022? Does it have to be in place by August? Obviously, it didn't meet this school year, so it's not going to impact this school year.
Right. I was going to say we don't have to make a decision right away.
No, we don't have to make a decision.
So what I understand is that parents have the right to opt out of the sexual portion of the curriculum, but not other parts of the curriculum. But part of the problem is that parents don't really understand what the curriculum is. If you understand what the curriculum is, then, I mean, if I had my child is still in school, I would not, parents for thousands of years have been teaching their kids about sex, you know, and here the schools formally have basically only been teaching sex formally in the schools since the second half of the 1900s, and here we are going way over to teaching beyond what I think most people are comfortable with. And I think parents really need to know what's being taught and what movies are being used and what websites are being recommended. And I mean, they're teaching oral sex, anal sex, masturbation, You know, I mean, yeah.
He's on my basketball team, he knows those words.
Okay, so, I mean, is that really necessary? I don't know.
Right.
So
Well, I really
Yeah.
hope that we also remember how much work people went to even get it to this point,
Right.
and how hard and how many protests and how much struggling went into waking up the state to make those things an issue that are going to be covered in education. I really have no issue, probably the extreme opposite of yours.
Probably you do.
And I would certainly hope that when this goes out to conversation, it goes out 100%. Because the more limiting our education is, the more backward and difficult it makes us.
I can tell you that, I'll give you an Michigan example of how they handle this. It is a mandatory district meeting at each grade level where you teach sex education. You invite the parents to come in for a preview of basically the core syllabus, what you do, why you do, how you do. And the parents are given the syllabus and the curriculum, and there is a place where if they choose to opt out, they can sign that. But it's a parental opt-out. It's not opt-in, it's opt-out.
it's opt out.
So just bear those in mind. Those are things to think about as you read that.
Thank you. Yep. Kenny, you've got some places for us to find more information. Tickled if you could send us an email.
Just Google comprehensive sex education in California.
Okay, thank you.
It is.
So, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
You have
Hold on. We've already done that.
We moved
Not,
They moved it.
We did
They
that
moved
much
it
earlier.
up.
we did it.
Oh, you did it? Oh, okay.
If you have something else, please jump up.
Okay, I'll make it really quick.
I second the move to adjourn.
I wanted to talk about the school calendar, really quickly. And so when we lost our short days, we really lost our valuable collaboration time, and we really lost it. Like you already know, September 24th is our first grade level meeting. And so I just want you to, I'm requesting that you consider, think about that, the bang for your buck that we're getting with more instructional time compared to what we are losing, which directly affects students. Directly affects them, that we are not able to meet at all, collaborate with my new teachers.
We knew that there were going to be
like
some
already
struggles with
said.
respect to the new calendar. And where we left that discussion was, we will try this for this year, and if it doesn't work out, then we will be making some adjustments for next year.
And we're going to sit and negotiate and talk about, the last time we negotiated, I gave alternatives of, after school, paying for time to do that, PD days, how can we do this?
Right, I know that doesn't work because like someone said before, some of the teachers come and some, can't come, so then you're still
That I
filling them
can't
in
help.
later, but, so you will be taking.
That's a professional obligation issue I can't deal with. I can
So-
only hold them to what I can hold.
So you will be taking input from teachers and WTA, and we will be
Work
creating
it
a
through
calendar
Tessa.
for next year.
Yeah, work it through Tessa,
And,
give her your concerns. I know there have to be some positives from it too. I would imagine there's a positive with it as well, so, again.
Okay, and I want to request that, next year in the future, if we have graduation day on a Thursday, so our teacher workday can be on a Friday. Right now we are coming in on a Monday, teacher workday is a Monday after the weekend. That is our teacher workday because graduation is on a Friday. So teachers are coming in on Monday to pack up our classrooms and check out and do all of those things, so if we could.
So what do you want?
They don't want to have to come back on Monday.
When graduation was
Prior
on
to
a Thursday, we could have our final work day on a Friday, not a Monday like it was changed
And
over the summer
Well,
to that, and
before
we
you
had
go
no
too far
discussion
with
or
that,
input. Okay.
that wasn't a mark, make them come in on Monday, by the way. Okay, that's the calendar mechanics of having to get 180 days in.
Okay.
So we have to pick and choose where we want to
Then
take
I have
off
a
and not.
question for you. Why do we have a 4-day weekend for Memorial Day?
Because that's what you've always had.
No, we had it, no, we had a 4-day weekend for Memorial Day because the Friday before Memorial Day was a professional development day built into our year. So that is why we had that. We didn't have, you know, so if that, I guess I assumed
I can
when we added that professional development day, I didn't know it would be on Halloween. I thought maybe it would be that Friday before Memorial Day, but since it was added on Halloween, it bumped everything back, and then graduation was the Friday, and our teacher work day was the Monday. So if we had teacher input before that happened over the summer, we could have worked that out. It's just a minor thing about calendars, and then...
Well, let me also say this, is that I would be surprised if you're in on Monday. Maria, I don't know what you're doing with your staff, but...
It's a teacher workday, we're not doing anything.
No, they have to show up.
But that's our day to clean out our classroom and check out, and that's
But
our teacher work day. That's
the
our only
reality is,
teacher work day.
It's a mechanic. I don't really care where it goes.
True.
I'm not beholden
Okay.
to it has to be this
Right.
day.
But at this point, we can't change graduation day. It's too late to make Memorial Day a 3-day weekend and put graduation on that Thursday in June 7th or 6th. I don't have it in front of me, but then have our teacher work day on Friday. Is it too
it
late?
possible? Yeah. It comes down to a very simple thing. You know, we tried to put 180 days in. You know, I asked the question, why do we take a full week off at Thanksgiving? I get people who, how come we don't have a ski week in February? Okay, well, because I'm assuming that in our community, 50% of the people aren't going to Tahoe.
Yeah.
So
Well, I've
we
always
don't
been
really
on-
need a ski week.
I've always been on the calendar committees before, and I would love to again, and I'm always really interested in that, and just having our, you know, teacher input. So we usually had 2 calendars. I know, you know, I would sometimes come up with one in the past. Other teachers would come up with one. We'd vote on just 2 calendars, and then we just, you know, we felt like we had more input on the calendar in the past.
And I've seen the Facebook thing, you took 3 days of my summer vacation that a couple of our teachers had put out there. And again, I'm not trying to take anybody's summer vacation. I had to put in 180 days of instruction. And we take these other days off, that's how it plays out. Every calendar is always a new event because holidays fall in different locations. It changes what you do at Christmas. When it's Thanksgiving, Easter fluctuates 3 to 4 weeks. And
Do we have a calendar committee?
Yes, you did.
No, yes, you are supposed to have a calendar committee. Maybe what's being missed here is that always before, CSEA had a cluster that made a calendar. WTA came up with their choices in a vote on one calendar. The 2 calendars were brought before the board, even though the board also was supposed to make up a calendar. And then you had 3 options, and you said, okay, we're going on this one. Majority of the time, it fit the board's voice, okay? But what is the big issue now, if I'm not misunderstanding, is that the calendar for this year came about sort of independently, as opposed to having included.
not exactly.
Well,
I always work with John to do the calendar.
yeah, well, John wasn't a whole committee, I'm sorry to
No,
say.
but I don't go do their bidding for him. I mean, that's their
No,
role.
and that's unfortunate.
Dan
that
did
we
see
have
the
to do
calendar
same.
ahead of time.
Yeah.
I showed board calendar. I can only ask so many times, we gotta put a calendar out.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not beholden to any date. I'm gonna be here regardless of whether it's
Well, and that's
there
a
or
good
not
thing,
there.
but that's why it comes up, because the process that used to be followed wasn't stuck with,
Well,
so
I
to
can also
speak.
point out that since I've been on the board, I've only seen one calendar. Basically, the superintendent provides us with a calendar, and we vote on it. I have yet to see a CSEA calendar, WTA calendar, and a district calendar.
Well, they've always made them.
That might be the case, but in my tenure on the board, I've yet to see that.
Well, the best I can figure when I used to do it, and we did it exactly as I explained, is that we took the calendar to the superintendent, and the superintendent chose the one to present to the board.
Okay.
So it would be easy to
Well, the other
figure,
part's
you only
behind the
got
scenes for us,
one.
is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Well,
but that,
then, let me throw out to consider, if we can consider, you know, moving graduation to a Thursday, having our teacher work day on a Friday, it would be a huge, overwhelming response from teachers. to, very popular thing to do.
Well, let me say this. Graduation is not beholden to the teacher's workday. Graduation can still be on Friday.
Thursday.
Or on Friday, well, it's on Friday now, right?
It's on Friday now, but I
Yes,
think
and it can stay there. It doesn't have to be, the teacher workday isn't a deal breaker on teacher workday. Okay? You could still have a workday and have graduation.
But, okay, but then I'm saying,
Yeah, I mean, there's-
you would need to change Memorial Day weekend to a 3-day instead of a 4-day.
Right. The issue is the day of instruction. That day of instruction has to fall somewhere. And remember, graduation is only seniors.
So all the other kids go to school that day.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
was
the
in a
point.
district where we had a day of school on the day of graduation because the senior went a night graduation.
Well, that's what you're doing now. See, that's what she's saying. The thing is, right now, graduation and kids come to school day is all the same thing. Teacher workday doesn't happen while the kids are at school, because
I know.
So what I'm hearing is that in order to meet the 180-day requirement that we try to hit, the calendar's basically full. The only way to fix that would be to take one of the days that teachers currently have off, or one of the continuing education days or staff improvement days, and change that. Am I correct? And then move.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly, if you would exchange for the, not having a 4-day weekend for Memorial Day for that.
So I would suggest that the WTA take a look at the calendar and see what day they're willing to give up.
And
if there's
don't
a day-
take this as being flippant when I say this. I'm not as concerned about where the WTA wants it as, is what is our response going to be to parents who want a 4-day weekend? And they don't show up on that Monday or that Friday, and our ADA is bad. That costs us money. So bear in mind that the calendar is also the mechanics of that.
Okay,
That
we
it's
can't
not
change.
just about accommodating so the teachers can end on a Friday, it's making sure we have kids here that we get funded correctly for.
which is kind of why you ended up with a week off at Thanksgiving, because so many people didn't come the first 2 days, you know. I mean, it's a process. I don't know that it can happen immediately, but it is, I mean, just like we're attempting to teach the district that they should have no short Tuesdays every single Tuesday, that calendar attempts to teach people when they need to come to work and when they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't mean work, I mean kids coming to school. Yeah, well, and
But there was no predisposed design, oh, I'm gonna make the teachers come back on Monday. I'm just counting 180.
Right.
And these are the vacations that fit. And so, like I said, I'm gonna probably be here on both those vacation days anyway, and it's not an issue for me.
So I think when I spoke in the summer about the calendar, there were so many things I was talking about that I didn't bring that one up because I was talking about other things, but, so yeah, more teacher input.
Yeah,
Okay.
my first concern is that I have kids here to teach. That's the first concern.
Okay, thank you.
So one more time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second?
second.
And?
I
All in
second.
favor?
Second.
Aye.